indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We don't need to do non-public, so we'll go immediately into introductions. I'd like to have Terry introduce Elise McGowan.
Elise?
Did I do it right?
Oh, I think you did it. Elise, come on up. Elise is our new food service
After
director.
why? Marjorie's been coaching me since I've gotten here.
What do you want? You can have a seat.
Okay.
Are we on what, day 3, 4? Day 4.
We just like to have the administrators come in and just briefly introduce themselves where they, what's the previous work, and then welcome them, basically.
Hi, Elise McGowan. I've been in food service since I was about 13, and prior was Fresh Fix Group. Prior to that, I've done some private schools, and prior to that, 20 years of catering. I walked into a wonderful team, and very impressed with the operation thus far. Looking forward to bringing some creativity and just expanding on the team a bit, and really excited about being able to contribute to the children's meals and just kind of opening up some ideas for them.
Awesome. Anything from any question?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
What do you say expanding? What do you mean by that?
Adding some creativity, looking at what the needs are, like I said, the team I think is doing a great job, but looking to expand some varieties and creation in certain areas. And that's where I think I could, expand the program.
Anybody else? Go ahead.
Just like meaning you're trying to get more people to sign up, participate in eating the food. Is that what you're trying to say? Okay.
Not just now it's just perhaps expanding participation, bringing maybe a different variety, a different take on things, allowing the staff to contribute. I think my professor did a fantastic job, but there's always a new twist to things and bringing a little excitement in.
Well, welcome to Raymond. Thanks for coming in.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? We're good.
Enjoy your evening.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're free.
Free.
Safe, everybody.
Thanks, Elise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up, public input. Anybody for public input? Go ahead.
Good evening. I hope each of you had a great Thanksgiving weekend with family and friends.
Name?
I am Doug Vogel.
Name.
Sorry, so it's next.
I didn't want you to get too.
I'm Doug Vogel, and I'm speaking as a concerned citizens and a point of contact for the Raymond Citizens Petition requesting a special school meeting for RSA 39:3. Last Tuesday, November 26th, SAU 33 accepted a petition letter and 29 pages of over 470 signatures. Well more than the required 5% of the registered voters needed to mandate a special school meeting to give the Raymond taxpayer voters a voice in the Raymond School Board's intent to install a significant project at a significant cost of a new solar field. During my discussion with petition signatures, I personally did not come across one resident that did not sign the petition. The actual project, the solar farm, was a second and sometimes a tertiary issue, and they still sign. And first and foremost, they always was upholding their rights to be heard within our Raymond community. Many assess the solar farm as a reasonable idea. They just wanted to hear more and are just requesting that their votes be counted at the requested special school meeting after evaluating the school board's presentation of why this project is in the best interest of the taxpayers. Residents are especially interested in the New Hampshire Utility Commission's cancellation of net metering, which introduced additional significant concerns and potential reduces in taxpayers' return on investment. The submitted petition for a special school meeting has 10 times the number of signatures that the number of residents who normally even attend the school board's first deliberative session. And that's a significant amount. This is the only time in my more than 25 years in Raymond that I can recall that the residents have invoked RSA 39:3 for a special meeting upon the school or the town's governing boards. These statements are a testament to the importance of a governing body working with the people for such a large, long-lasting, and expansive continuous project for the second time. I do see survey markers installed for where the potential solar farm will be placed. Out of respect for the request that school boards seriously consider suspending all work on the solar project until the residents' voices are heard. At the special school meeting, the voters may decide to confirm the plan and authorize continued solar project, or the residents may disapprove the project and per RSA 32:10, paragraph 1, section echo, no amount, quote, no amount shall be transferred to or expended for such purpose. Thus key in the well-known phrase in New Hampshire, no means no, for this proposed project. A decision to continue working and expending taxpayers' funds on this project while knowing it may be stopped by the voters would be contrary to people's trust and being a good steward of the residents' hard-earned wages in this petition. As a point of contact, I have additionally submitted the appropriate form to have the status of the special school meeting on an agenda, and I appreciate the help of John to get me there. We, the people, look forward to having an open two-way conversation on the status of executing the required special school board meeting, and then a greater discussion on the solar farm at the special school meeting so that the voters may be heard. This is not about the solar field. That's just the subject. This is about allowing the voters to sign and have a vote. So I requested an agenda. I know you're working on it. It was too late for this meeting. And I hope that your next meeting, it will be an agenda item. Look forward to that. And then if you can, are you able to say, if your legal lawyer has looked at it, have you talked to NHMA or your school association or whatever you need to do about when you think the special meeting would be for RSA, was it 32.3, 39.3?
We've had no such discussion about when, if and when the meeting would be held.
So, okay, so I assume that you're doing due process because I could not file, tell you point blank, I couldn't find, and neither did I request yet from NHMA or the state or DRA or anybody else. What is the time requirement? I know it had to be submitted prior to December 1st in accordance with New Hampshire law, and it was. And I know the clerks of the works have to go through and validate all 472 signatures to make sure they are residents, registered and so forth. I know that has to happen yet, because if it drops less than 5% of the registered voters the day it was submitted, then it's not a valid petition. So, I mean, that's just reality of life. So I'd ask you to take whatever appropriate steps needed to process it. So I most likely think it'd probably be in January after the holidays, once you go through all your process. But I thank you for your due diligence and what you're doing. I'm just asking for the voters to have a vote. Is there any questions of me?
I just have a quick question. Do you know off the top of your head how many registered voters there are now?
Prior to November 5th, the checklist told me 7,200 was a good round number. They added about 680.
Right.
So that pushed it up higher. They added it up because now you had to do it on 5% of that. So the number got jacked while we were doing this. But my understanding, I did contact the checklist, Kathy, and she gave me an estimate of what it was. But then she also says that it changes every single moment that somebody's coming on, somebody's going off. So as of the day it was submitted would be the date that was on the checklist as authorized would be the 5% that would be required.
Just under 8,000.
Yes. So I will tell you point blank, with 472, we calculated there's about a 90 additional signatures. So even if 10% or 5% removed, you're still above the 5% required. And I have been contacting more. I got more signatures, too late. So if there's no other question for me, I appreciate what you're doing and thank you so much.
Thanks, Mr. Vogel.
All right, take care.
All right. Anybody else for public input? All right, the public input will continue to be opened, for another 22, my math is right, 21 minutes, ballpark. All right. Next up. Our students, our schools, Wentworth Elementary School math, Mr. Love.
We do. We have Miss White and some students. Was talked about, I think when we went over data about some math games. So we have some video of some math games being and some students to talk about those math games.
As the students are coming up, if you're a parent and would like to tape and or take pictures, you're certainly capable of coming to either my left or down by the Superintendent Leatherman down there on my right. Right over here. No,
You might be on camera, but yeah.
So hi, I'm Ashley Lewis, one of the first grade teachers at LRES. This is Ben and Alina and Cohen. And they're three of my first graders in my class, and they decided to come join us and talk about math games in the class. First we have some slides to go.
I didn't want to know, but now I want.
I'm gonna try to make it easy. Why? Why is she getting nice? You want the first Yes, your first goes perfect one last. All right, so what do you explain to me what you're doing?
Game now.
Explain to me what are you doing? Yes, putting it in the spot at the top. Why did you play this game?
The help us know. Remember.
This top one, what does it mean?
That means total.
The total, yeah. And what are these?
Part.
Part, and this is the total.
And then whatever you get, you have to put a person or like whatever. Oh no, the spot.
Okay, so if I roll a 5, there's no 5 on there.
Right. You do a 10 and a 5.
You add 10. Say it again, say it again.
And then you gotta find the card that says 53 and then you can line it up.
So it's the same, 53, and then this is 50 plus 3, so that's 53.
Yeah.
And then can you show me how this is 52? It's 10 blocks?
Yeah, it's like you got 3 more 53.
Oh, so this is 53. Oh, so then these are 34, 34, and 34. Can you show me one over here?
18, 10 and 8. 10 and 8. This is 50. This is 10, 8 bucks.
Because
See, this is 50. After that, I gotta find the card that's 54. I don't think I will find it. It's the funny one.
Can you tell it again so that we start again? 4. 4 plus what is 10?
6. That's right.
So where's the 6? Now, your turn. Okay.
heard or game or problem on something, and ask your turn of problem. If you're in the middle of the game, you can cut off if you're. Here's the funny one. You guys, this isn't working. Guys, who's going first? Me. Figure it out. Rock, paper, scissors. You can go first. I go second. You go first. You can be next. You can be next. You be inspired. I can be next. People
So, all right, so guys, I'm gonna ask you some questions so that you can tell them why we play math games and what we do, okay? You ready? All right, Cohen, what's your favorite math game?
trash.
Why do you like it?
Because
Take your hands up so I can hear you.
because it's easy to play and it's fun.
Alina, do you want to answer or no? No? And what's your favorite trash game? Favorite math game? Remember?
I do.
Do you remember which one? How did we play? Which one? Yeah, which one? With the people when you had 10, right? That was 5 in a line. And you have to make it in a line. What do you do for that game? How do you play?
Or dice, whatever you get, you put your pen on that or the numbers.
But what do you do with the dice number?
You have to add 10.
Add 10 to that number, then you find it on the board, right?
Yeah.
And if you get how many?
5 in a row.
Then you win. Yeah. Awesome. Alina, do you want to share your favorite game? Feeling a little shy. Ellen, why do we play math games at school?
So you can learn better.
And what else?
So you can do math good.
Ben, do you know why we play math games at school?
It helps us learn
Learn what?
math.
Are they skills that you are learning, or are you practicing skills that you already know? Yeah. Cohen, did you have something to say?
And trying things you do not know if you're capable
Wow.
So when do we play math games?
of. In the middle of the day.
In the middle of the day? Okay. During what time? Do you remember what it's called?
No, I do.
What?
Math means.
Math win. Yeah, during math win. Do you remember, Alina? Go ahead. Do you remember why? Do you remember your favorite game? Do you remember her favorite game? What's her favorite game?
It's trash.
Oh, it's like your favorite game.
It's the same game.
Trash is easy, and it's a quick game that they can grasp very easily. It's the 10 frame, so numbers go in sequence, so they have to remember which sequence it actually goes in.
What does sequence mean?
Order.
Order?
You do know.
No, I was thinking if it's like number order or just like a normal order.
So what happens if you don't win?
You go the same way, but you go first.
Okay. But do friends, then you can answer. So do friends always like it when they don't win? No. What should they do if they don't win?
I don't know. Oh, shaky. It's a good game.
And say good game, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Alina, what happens if you win?
You have to set up your time frame again.
Yeah.
But you have to do if you have 10 and then you win, you have to do 9 for
Nine.
the next
If you get all the way to 0.
Like,
This would.
and then you get a trophy.
Can we get a trophy at school though?
No, but you can make one.
You can make one.
You can make
Yeah.
your own.
Or you can make your own trophy.
I'm allowed a question.
Yeah, we're all.
Questions,
Do you have any questions for us?
comments for the board?
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
Thank you all for coming, and that was really fun to watch you play the games. And thank you for answering questions and sharing what you do at school. I have a question. Is math your favorite subject?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, great.
Science.
Science. Well, that's good too. They kind of
I'm gonna
crisscross.
I love that idea.
Very good.
Go ahead, Steve. Do you think it's one of your favorites because you enjoy the games and learning with the games? It's a fun way to do it, right?
It is.
Nice job.
Good job, guys. Thank you for coming in. Thank you, Ms. Lewis. Thank you to the parents for getting them here.
Yeah.
So thank you. Job.
Thank you.
Before I forget to do this, I have a housekeeping. Joe, if you could just tell us where you are and why you're not here.
I am somewhere in Central America, and that's why I'm not there.
Thank you, Joe. I forgot to do it when you got on, so thank you.
No problem.
Next up, student support services update. Jody's here. Evening, Jody.
Evening, everybody.
Joe, can you say hi?
Hello.
Thank
You.
you.
Figured that out on my own.
Very good. Trying.
I'm getting better. We'll get you working for Matt and no.
Oh, no.
So if I'm remote, like, and I'm at home, I can just say I'm in North America.
There you go, Tony. I didn't even think of that. That's a good idea.
I can be more specific and say I'm
I
in
just,
Belize.
it is a funny answer, that's all. I'm used to, like, for COVID, it was, oh, I'm in my living room and there's like, I'm in Central America. That's it, that answer's fine. Like,
One more thing.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. Never mixed it all the way over to me.
Today I'll be talking about some data, priorities updates, and the recent audit referred to as the tax audit that we briefly discussed last presentation. For our October 1st counts, just an update that as of October 1st of this year, we had 234 identified students for a percentage of 20.47% of students identified within the district. Just pretty consistent with past numbers. Currently, there are 102 students with 504 plans, which makes up 9% of total enrollment. Which again is consistent from past numbers over the last year. You look at the overall percentage of students with IEP or 504 plans, 29% of your student body has an IEP or 504 plan. And again, those numbers are 20% with IEPs and 9%. Again, you can see that it is fairly consistent over the past year. Out of district numbers have changed a little bit since we last met in September. I do believe that Terry has updated and those numbers. So right now we are looking at 22 students that are placed in out-of-district placements. Again, this is between special education programs, court-placed foster care, legal agreements. This is 1.9% of the total enrollment. And then this equates to 9.4% of students with IEPs district-wide. I will say there is a potential for a student to be removed from this list in the fairly not too far off future.
Yes, go ahead, Tony.
Can I ask a question real quick? Do we know, is there like a state average for out of district placement? I mean, is that common throughout every district? Do we know, you know what I'm saying? Like, is that
It varies.
on the higher end or the lower end, or do we have any kind of scale for that?
I don't have a scale. It varies on the size of the communities, the programming that's offered within the schools. So some schools offer alternative schools within school programs, which helps offset the need to send some students to specialized schools. Some communities are very small and don't have any special education placements or self-contained programs, which then requires them to actually place a fair amount of students with disabilities because they don't have the resources to support them within district. So it all varies. I know we're not the highest end. I do think we're probably more in the average to high end than the low end, at least for this region of the state. But that's just in conversations with some other directors. I don't actually have the data to back that up. And again, the numbers change so fluidly that if I ask directors when I see them at an upcoming meeting, those numbers might be entirely different as well. Some priorities and updates for our SEL programming. We continue to try to create proactive programming versus reactive programming. This is your pond program within the elementary school and your RAM room at the middle school. And you're now referred to Go 201 at the high school. It used to be referred to as the REAP program. Charter schools. This is my favorite activity that I spend my time on. So we are in the process of negotiating an additional MOU for a new charter school. That is in process. And then currently negotiating rates. So I actually just had a good conversation with a charter school. They submitted some invoices to us. And based on the invoices, they actually provided information that I did request. Oftentimes charter schools do not provide the information that I request to review the invoices. And in the invoice total, they provided the amount of students that were being provided that same service that we were being charged for. So it was a group setting. When I calculated out what they were charging us versus what it would look like they were taking in if they were charging for every student the same, they were making a substantial amount of money because they provided that information. So I was able to have a conversation with them to kind of understand a little bit more about why they're doing that. That is typical for charter schools. But again, this was a good conversation with the charter school. They explained their process to me. Their process is actually a little bit different. They're a charter school that sees a lot of students from a couple specific districts. So to try to work with those districts and lower those districts' costs in a group. So let's say we have a group of 10 for students. If 5 of those students all come from one district, they charge that district one time. But then for maybe a district like us who only has 1 of those 10 students, they say they're charging us the same price as they're charging the other district that's charging 5. So they're actually not doing it per student. They're doing it per district. So some districts pick up the cost and some districts benefit from the way they're doing it. So in conversations with this charter school, they did agree to void the last invoice that they sent us. They were going to work with us in negotiating those terms and sending out a new invoice. I think we're on the same page, but I'm waiting to see that. That just gives you an idea of the conversations I'm having with the charter schools.
Go ahead, Steve.
Is that kind of the same practice across the board, or is that unique to that school? The
As far
fact
as
that,
the way they're charging,
yeah,
that is unique to that school. That's why when I was giving them the math, they're like, well, we're not actually bringing in that much money because that's not how we're doing it. And I was like, that's how the rules allow for it. So then they explained their process.
Thank you. As a public entity, are they allowed to do that?
As a public entity,
Which is what they are.
they are supposed to agree to the terms in the MOU with the school districts, and they're supposed to charge you actual costs so that they're not taking in additional money. So essentially, if the staff member providing the service makes $50 an hour with all benefits included, then if they're providing services in a group setting to 5 students, each district would be charged for each student $10 for that service. If it ends up being a group of 3 that day, then they would do a third of the 50. So they're really supposed to calculate it out different, even on a daily basis, because services change, students are out and all of that. But what I'm finding with charter schools is none of them are doing that because it's time consuming from their end. So they're all charging a flat rate. Again, this charter school that I just spoke with, I think we are on the same page. I'm waiting to see the invoice. So I do think it's some headway. But yes, those charter schools are just charging the flat rate. And like I've mentioned previously, we're kind of stuck in a bind a little bit because there's really no process to dispute and have impasses. And because we don't have the resources to send our staff to the charter schools, they're placed in various areas of the state. And the student is required to have their service met. We're kind of in a situation where if the charter school pushes back and says, if you don't pay what we're invoicing you, we're going to stop, providing service. It gets to be a tricky situation. There's actually another charter school that we're dealing with that in this region of the state. Many school districts are getting some pushback from that charter school specifically, telling them that they're going to inform parents and that they're going to stop providing services because the districts aren't paying them. I think we're actually in a better place with that charter school than a lot of the surrounding areas. They have actually not said anything because they're charging things they're not supposed to say for. And I'm going through the invoices and I'm removing certain things from the invoices and then I'm paying the rest of the invoice that I do feel that we should be paying. And so far I have not heard back from them that they have problems with that.
To follow up. I said to follow up and now I can't remember where I was going to follow up with. So,
Sorry, I just gave a lot of information.
no, that's fine. Go ahead, Tom.
I was just curious if there was a legal avenue we could take, because that doesn't sound very ethical, at least, and almost sounds like extortion to me.
I mean, there is no districts right now that have decided to pursue any legal means with charter schools.
I mean, if they're charging us essentially 5 times the amount they're charging other districts, I mean, that's could add up. How long have they been doing that for? How many different things are they doing that for? And how much money has that cost us?
That's
In the whole take your kid and go home if you don't like it attitude, okay, we'll find another school if that's the way it goes. But I don't think that's a reason to keep paying these costs because we're afraid they're gonna pull the plug on us.
And again, some charter schools are much easier to work with than other charter schools.
I'm sure.
Jody.
But this one sounds like a problem.
Sorry. The question I had, which was something you were mentioning, and Tony thankfully mentioned it, which is, as a public school, can they actually say to them, they're not going to provide a service?
Can they tell the family or can they tell us?
Can they not provide the service to the student
They cannot
as a
provide-
student?
They cannot provide the service to the student because ultimately LEA's school districts are responsible for ensuring that student gets the services. So if they really want to play the game, they can come back and say, we're not going to provide it. School district, you have to figure out how you're providing the service because we no longer are.
So that's kind of extortion.
I'm like,
Sounds it.
that sounds like
What
Texas.
makes it not extortion?
Yeah.
I
That
have a
it's school.
question.
All right,
I have a question.
go ahead, Cindy.
How many different charter schools are we sending students to?
These 7.
7?
I would want to double check that number though. So I can confirm if that's inaccurate in a Friday memo.
If you would, that'd be great.
Is there any chance we could get a list of what the charter schools are as well? Like which charter schools is that?
Can we know
Reasonable.
the names of the individual charter
Can we
schools?
know?
If not, I don't.
Why not?
Okay, I don't, yeah.
Yeah, because we don't even know who it is, just where they're going.
I don't see why not. I can.
Okay. It's sensitive area, so I always,
And also
Right,
maybe
okay.
add in, like how far away it is, like in miles, like.
We're not sending them, they're
yeah,
volunteering.
yeah, that's the key.
This is not the, I
We're
don't,
not,
Right, the parent has to
volunteering
agree to it.
yeah,
But
so,
we have to pay some of it,
Correct.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So the parents decided they wanted to send us.
Yeah, we're not telling them they have to
No, but
go.
yeah.
I'm just saying we're involved in paying for them to
Correct.
go to those schools. I'm just curious what schools they are.
Some of them
How far they
are
are.
pretty far away.
Yeah, I know some have special needs they might not have locally or, you know. I'm just curious. I'm not like Nicholas or anything. I'm just curious. I know there's more and more charter schools going up. So.
So just for my own clarity, the charter schools are not the out of district placement schools, or they are?
They are not the out of district. So in the numbers that I give you,
Mm.
it's not the single charter school.
So the charter school list of schools and students is those folks who've made the choice to say, it's not a special education placement, but I'm going to move my kid to this school.
Correct.
Okay.
Those individuals have an IEP, and then we are still bound to provide the services in those IEPs.
Does everyone that goes to the charter school need to have an IEP in order for that to be done, or does it just happen to work out that way for us?
So we have plenty of students within this district that go to charter school that I don't have a list of that do not have an IEP in place.
Okay.
Then we have students that go from our public schools and say, we want to explore another option. They enroll into a charter school, and then we become aware right away that they're in that charter school. We go through, we have a meeting, we change the placement to basically say that it's a unilaterally placed parent place. And then we start looking at if the services IEP are still relevant and provided at the charter school. How certain things don't match with the philosophy, and maybe the parent no longer wants that service. So then we kind of look at what we're going to provide, and then we work on providing that. But if a student moves from a public school to a charter school, the parent still has the right to have all the services that are listed in that current IEP. And some charter schools are able to provide all those services, but they just fill us. And then in other cases, we actually have to contract out or send people because it might be a specific need that charter school doesn't have.
But you can go to a charter school without an IEP. You're just saying this is the list of folks that do have it that you're talking about.
Yes.
Do you have a number on how many go in general, with or without?
Would be hard to tell because they consider homeschooled and then decide to go to charter school. They don't have to tell us.
And do we have hardship cases that also go to the charter school, the public?
Have
Yes, my question, I guess, is, right, so yeah, when the difference between just a regular charter school student with an IEP or an out of district placement, kind of trying to figure out what the difference is there. Is out of district something that we just can't provide, so we have to send them out?
correct.
So out of district is student has some very complex medical needs, and it is more beneficial for the student, more cost effective for the district to send the students to a specialized school that can meet their medical needs, because we would have to get various medical providers here to be able to support students. It could be that the student is nonverbal and is a student with autism, and they need a lot of specialized support throughout the day. And maybe we don't have any students within their age level, their developmental age as well, that we can put them in a program so they have access to their typical peers and able to do something above and beyond. So we put them in a specialized school where they have access to peers similar to that.
Right.
So the out of district numbers that I gave you, situations like that, where a parent has come back and said, I would like to request that my student go to a specialized school. And or we have come back and said, we feel like your child is progressing the way we'd like them to progress, so we're recommending specialized school. It also includes your court-based students. So if DCYF comes in and needs to place a student somewhere else, if DHHS needs to come in and place somebody else through an episode of treatment, that's included. It includes your legal agreements, your educational benefits hardships.
Those that have nothing to do, essentially have nothing to do with special education, or
It
just,
does not necessarily have anything to do with special education. I lump them all together because it becomes identifiable if I separate things out. And then again, your charter schools are entirely.
So, yeah, the list of folks out of district with the placements that we have listed as the special ed costs that we keep talking about, that keep going up, tuition and tuitions. But the general ed student who just chooses a charter school also impacts us. But not in your world, I understand. Yeah, okay. I guess I didn't realize there was that.
Think about that when you think of district.
Yeah, we just got a district, we think the other way, but there's some that are out of district that are choosing to go and taking budget with it.
And when you look at your budget lines, if it's a private special education school, it comes out of private tuition lines. If it is a charter school or a student that might be going to another public school due to an educational hardship, you're gonna see that on public tuition lines.
Okay.
So a lot of those public lines are charter school related.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
I just wasn't following.
Yeah, no, it's
There's a
all
lot
the
there.
bouncing ball.
talk all day about turkeys.
I didn't get on my horse, so I'm trying to stay off. There would be a quick meeting tonight. I never went.
The rest of my presentation involves the audit, which stands for Program Approval and General Supervision Monitoring. You'll hear me say PAGS. That's how the Bureau of Special Education, the New Hampshire Department of Education refers to it as well. And my next slides are going to go through some of the components that I know right now about the PAGS program. Part of that, when they come in and do that, they will be looking at our self-contained programming. And as I mentioned before, there was a requirement to have dual certifications for some of the self-contained programming. We have gotten some further information regarding that from the Bureau of Education, the New Hampshire Department of Education, which talks about if it's an alternative program with alternative academic standards that you may or may not need to have a dual certified individual. So we're still working on that language a little bit, but if a student is on a high school self-contained program and they are not working towards a typical diploma, and they're working towards like a certificate of completion or alternative diploma, then in those instances, because they're working on alternative academic standards, there's not necessarily the same need for them to have a dual certified teacher. Yet our preschool program, for example, does require dual certified staff because we have, it's an inclusive program and you have students with and without disabilities within that program. I had mentioned is working on some program descriptions. There is a link here if you're interested, or for anybody in the community if they're interested. We do have a quick description of our special education programs that's now accessible on the website. And this was in part in preparation for the PAGS audit.
And that's Raymond specific programs.
The Raymond specific programs. It primarily talks about our self-contained programs. You actually won't see reference to the SEL programs because they're not special education programs. So this is just some overall information that the Bureau of Special Education through the New Hampshire Department of Education provides on the audit itself. There is a couple links in here in this if you feel like on your own time taking a little cruise through the PAGS world as I'm learning it. There are some links here. The audit page will take you to the main page where you can pull up the manual if you want. You can see some other districts. What I have found very helpful recently is the districts that went through it last year. They are public facing documents, which are going to help us out with the process. They are posted online for you to view. So I've started exploring, looking through some of those to get an idea of what other districts are having findings on and how they're writing things. You can find that on there. If you're also interested to see where everybody within the state falls as far as when their audit is going to be. There's a link for the 6-year plan as well for all of the school districts that are going through the process. Overall, they are looking at 8 different components. I put the components on here, but it actually looks different in another slide that I'm going to show you, so I'm not going to get into it too much here. These are things that happen, how they break it down through the process. And essentially they're going through this because they have to report to the federal government how we're doing as a state. And in order for them to do that, they need to report out on how the local public schools are doing. These are all the districts that went through it last year. This is a little, no, so these are the districts right now that you can actually pull up online if you have interest in looking through how they did. I shared a couple out with Terry for review as well. I would say some of the ones that you could take a look at if you wanted to, correction, the ones at the top are the ones you can find online. The ones below that are going through it right now. So there's one available after we start the process. But I think if we would look at Claremont, Andover, Merrimack Valley, and probably all the ones comprised in SAU 15. If you have any interest, it'll give you a good idea of the process.
Jody, do you know the ones in fall? There are 2, Leominster and Monroe, that have asterisks next to them. Do you know what the significance of that is?
I believe it's because they got moved up in the timeline. So as
Lucky them.
yes, as part of the process, they put out this pre-planned 6-year plan.
Yep.
But if anything pops up and all of a sudden our district has concerns, they've gotten a lot of parent complaints, or they've gotten some other things that they've been looking into with the district, they have the right to move those districts sooner or to redo them if they want within the 6-year cycle.
Yeah, I saw something to the effect in the presentation where basically the state can do anything they want, basically. When they want, where they want.
They
So
do have that power.
Yeah, on the linked version, it just says indicates a change. And they reserve the right to do it whenever they want.
We are scheduled, so ours will be happening. There are 8 different components that they look at. And there's primarily 2 main phases. So the discovery phase, and I'll jump ahead for a second. On the timeline page, you can see we're in monitoring 2 status. So we got a letter saying we're intending to monitor you. And the process actually starts in January. But you'll see that it's an ongoing process. And really from January through July, there are multiple components happening throughout this audit. The bulk of the work is going to happen January through March. But there still will be some stuff that will be happening from April through July. And then as far as the components, so the discovery phase is the first phase, again, January through March. That's when we're going to be providing the most information to the department and gathering the most information. And I'll get into the ones that are highlighted in yellow are specifically some of the ones that I'm going to get into in future slides and explain a little bit more. And then the verification phase is 60 days after that. And during that time period, sometimes you can make some corrections throughout different things that they come back and they look at. And it's also when they're going to be doing some additional reviews on their end. Component 1.
before you go on.
Yep.
Cindy, you had a question?
Yeah, I have a question. So you're talking about audit, like who is it that audits, and do they come like in person, or are they just looking at your records? How does that work?
Yep, so it's a combination. So
Who's they?
the Department of Education, the Bureau of Special Education.
Bureau of Special Ed. Okay. Mhm.
So they will come in. We have a lead consultant who is the main person who will go through various data points, review different information that we submit, and then provide the findings. So in this case, our lead consultant is going to meet with the leadership team on January 6th, it's the Monday after the holiday break. They'll review with the leadership team some information about the process. They'll go through the manual, they'll go through next steps. And at that point, we start putting information together if we haven't already, and we start giving the information to them. So during the first 90 days, there's certain information that we have to provide to that individual. They then take it and they look at it as far as, are there any findings? Are there not any findings? How is the district doing? There's also things that they do on their end. So for the component 1, this is a special education program presentation, which I'm going to get into on another slide to tell you a little bit more about that breakdown. But primarily that is everything that Raymond is doing. The department reviews it, but they're not really doing any of that portion of the work. We're providing it all. Component 2 looks at indicators and data. That is nothing we do. That is solely something that the Bureau does. They look at all the various indicators that we report on throughout the year, and they look at those data points. They determine if there's anything that we keep year after year, showing that we're struggling in that area, or if there's anything that stands out to them in that area, they would indicate that in component 2. I haven't reviewed, I'm not an expert in this yet. I haven't reviewed all of the material that's put online. But I think in this case, a lot of times things that are listed here are like, and we might be in the situation, is proficiency. So you get looked at as far as your gap of proficiency in like reading and writing. That is one thing that it looks like districts keep getting put on, because there is a gap between regular education and special education students. We all know that within the state that there's that gap, but they are calling certain districts out on that. So that's just one piece of that.
Go ahead, Cindy.
Is this a new program? Cause like, is this just the first time they're doing this type of audit?
Yes.
Okay. And so, it's special education. I would think everybody's going to be different. Like, how do they make, I'm sure it's oversight as far as making sure you're doing it and following, trying to do the best for the student. But you can't really compare apples to oranges.
There are certain things-
kids are going to be, if they're special ed, they're going to be behind in some sort of things.
Yes, but there's other things that they look at. So on component 5, your student file reviews, they're going to be looking at, within the IEP, within the file for that student, are the IEP teams doing certain things? Are they measuring progress, and are they documenting that they're measuring progress? Did they actually provide the service that's listed in the IEP, and did they document what they did during that service? Did they talk about the students' strengths within that document? Did they talk about the students' academic, functional, and developmental needs within that document? So for some districts, they're having findings that are showing that they're not including certain things within the IEP that they should be including. So yes, while it's unique because all students are different and all communities are different, there are certain elements that, regardless of all of those things, you should still have included as part of that student's special education planning document that certain districts struggle with more than other districts.
I guess I just feel like we paid, we're paying the professionals, like you guys are the professionals. So you're the ones, I'm assuming you're actually doing it, but then you need someone else to make sure you're doing your job. Just seems like a lot of
Redundancy.
redundancy.
It's kind of a monitoring aspect, because again, the federal government monitors all the states, and then New Hampshire has to be able to submit information to the federal government to indicate that all the districts within the state are doing well. And for the districts that might be struggling, what is the department doing to help support those districts to ensure that all students are getting what they need?
So they want to make sure that the mandated expenses are being expended.
Properly. But I just feel like too, it's like a lot of pressure because we're hiring people to help with the problem, which, if the problem isn't being solved, we're the ones that are going to know that, I would think, because the kids aren't going to be improving. So, I don't know. Just seems like a lot. It seems like a lot of pressure when it's already difficult. You know what I'm saying? You're already treating difficult students and trying to meet their needs. And then now you got to turn around and just do the right thing. And you'll be all set, right?
Yeah, it's a time-intensive process that we have to go through. But I think at the end of the day, kind of what they're looking for is they submit again online if people know where to find it. It's a public facing document that just kind of gives an overview of how all the various districts are performing from a special education standpoint. And, you know, I look at it as far as like, if we're not doing something as well as we could be doing it, then maybe this is an opportunity for us to get some suggestions on how to do things better. I already know there's certain things that various buildings or individuals might struggle with more than others that, you know, we're already trying to work on. So we're already looking at expanding, you know, our program offerings and ensuring that the students are getting the best that we can provide, the resources that we have, and ensuring that they're all making progress. But I do think throughout this process, this audit, it could be interesting to see if there's anything that we were unaware of as an area for growth as well. Or maybe it'll come back and say that, you know, there's a lot of progress being made in this community and there won't be a lot of findings. I can't predict where this is going to go with the findings. It definitely looks like, again, through the review, some districts are doing very well and other districts are having a lot of areas that they need to show improvement. And some of them we don't have that much control on, right? The proficiency gaps in reading, writing, math, like we don't have a lot of, there's not a lot we can do in that area quickly, because that's something we're working on as a district whole for all students. Another thing they look at is your educational environmental analysis. So these are your special education programs. So self-contained programs and your like resource room model programs where students go and service it quickly and then go back to the classroom. That's kind of us. From my understanding, and I'm not entirely sure about this one, I'm still waiting to see if it's bigger than I think it is. When you apply for a program, a special education program, for like a self-contained program, so like our leaps and bounds or our connections, you have to submit an application. The state only holds those applications for so long. So in some instances, when you go through this process, they see what areas the program has been agreed upon. So if it's a program for students with autism and specific learning disabilities and other health impairments, they'll see that. They'll see the school, they'll see the ages and the grades, but they may no longer actually see the applications indicate what's the curriculum of the program, what does the program actually look like. So I do think as part of this, we're going to have to write the programming, some of the programs we already have in place. But I also think that's a good opportunity for the current teams to really figure out what is it they want in these programs, if they want to change anything within the programs. But I'm not sure how much we have to write or not write on that, but that's kind of what that educational environmental analysis is. Equitable services review. I'm not overly worried about that for us. That's if you have a like a private parochial school within the district, and there's a series of questions that you have to answer to indicate that you've worked with that school to offer them some supports for students that attend that school. We don't have any, so you don't have to do the bulk of that requirement. The student file reviews I mentioned, and then there's a fiscal and financial section of this that comes into our grants. Are we submitting our monthly, are we monthly putting in for the reimbursement through the grants? Are we utilizing all of the money? Again, I'm not worried about this section. Classroom observations, the department will come in and they will do observations of the various special education programs within the district. I am unclear if they see all of them or if they see a portion of them. I think it's up to them as far as what they want to see. But they come and observe. They Typically, we'll have announced visits, but they do have the right to do unannounced visits. I've already asked schools that if they show up unannounced, to please contact me, that I can join them on the tour. If for some reason I'm not available, that another administrator in the building attend them on the tour, just so that we don't just give them complete access to roam our buildings. But they'll be doing classroom observations, and then they do write about what they saw confidentially within the reports that are done at the end. And then there is
Where
a
you going,
family.
Jody?
Yes.
Where you going? Is it a good breaking point or?
No, it's fine.
Joe, I think you have a question. My binoculars aren't working.
Yes, I do. So Jody, so you're sitting there telling me, say, we'll take Manchester, has several parochial schools in it, that the public schools must help those parochial schools if somebody in that school has special needs?
Yes, they have to figure out how they're going to help support that school. So, students in parochial schools have a right to an ISP, an individual student plan. And within that plan, it might say that the student, it's a much condensed version of an IEP, because the student might have one normal service and one goal that they're working on. But it's not to say that every student has one. It's one of those, the public district works with the school and they determine which students are going to have plans and which students aren't going to have plans, because a portion of their grant needs to help support the parochial schools. But there's limited money. So some, when the money runs out, they kind of just stop providing the services. Some don't provide it to specific students. They do it for like consultation in a group to help. Okay, you've got a few students that attend this program and we're going to give you tips and tools to help support the students without being student specific. But yes, they do have to provide the support. So in Manchester, they do. They have multiple schools that they help. It ends up being minimal though.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then the last component is the family and caregiver listening sessions and staff surveys. This is not something that I am able to, or any of district staff, unless they also reside in the district, are able to participate in. I solely work with the department on picking the date that those are going to occur on, and then we get that information out. And then depending on how many community members and parents and staff attend, depend on kind of the findings as far as how we get rated in that section. They ask a series of questions, and if people get off topic, they bring them back to the topics being discussed. And at the end, we get an individual monitoring plan. With, in our case, limited things that we need to work on, but I can't predict that right now.
Without getting into a lot of detail, Jody, and you've touched on it, I think, a little bit. We get the report. We find out what the findings are. Is the state offering help, or is it, Jody, go to town?
Yes, they offer some support. So you'll see in the timeline. So the discovery, again, is the bulk of the time that the leadership team and myself will be preparing and presenting all the information. And during that time period, if you present it early on and they say, we don't, so like one of the things you have to provide is some of the district special education forms that we use. If we submit the form and they say you're missing a component within this form, you need to redo it. If you do that early on in the process, they send it back, you correct it, there's no findings, you just fixed it, and that's what they indicate is that you fixed it. And then the verification stage, they go through again some of those file reviews, they do some other stuff on their end. They also work with you a little bit, again, just to see if there's certain things that maybe you can change or can't change. There's a pre-findings period of time where you can again make certain changes depending on if there are things that you can change. Some of the findings are going to be something you can't change, like you had an IEP meeting, you didn't do something, and there's no way that you can go back and do what you didn't do, right? And then you get the monitoring plan, and then there's a corrective action plan. If you have findings, there's a corrective action plan. You have up to a year to demonstrate that you have corrected what needed to be corrected, provided professional development. The the DOE will provide a lot of the professional development if that's what's needed. So they will help you along the way, but they also will leave it up to you sometimes and say, okay, spend 6 months and do an analysis and do a root cause and figure out why this is occurring, and then figure out what the solution is to that problem and bring that back to us.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So this might be a landmine of a question, but what happens if you don't do the corrections? I'm not saying we wouldn't, but is there,
Daily fines or?
well, that, just out of curiosity, I'm like, I think, honestly, I'll say, I think this is good. We have oversight. Cause I agree, do the right thing and you're fine.
Yeah.
There are people who won't, so this makes them do it. But I'm just curious, have they said, like, if a school district is, not us, some other school district
Mhm.
is found non-compliant, what happens? Have they given a,
Refuse to comply? Like,
Yeah.
like, hey, this is what we got, take it or leave it.
right, like, so what happens if things don't go the way they want?
I do believe they have given some guidance on that. I actually think there's some guidance in the manual, which I have here, but I don't spend the time looking at it, or I can get.
No, right now, you can let us know later. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm just, and honestly, I'm just kind of more, maybe morbidly curious.
Well, I can speak from experience on other corrective action plans I've been involved with. If you don't comply, there was threat of daily fines up to $50,000 a day.
Wow. Okay, well, that's a motivator.
Yeah.
I don't
And
think it's
suing,
fine.
yeah.
I think I have, again, I don't know if it's specific to this or not, but there are times where they can like remove your grant funding.
Oh.
Pretty much, that's pretty much like fining us.
Yeah. Like, that's, yeah. Where's the stick? There it is. Okay,
Yeah, exactly.
thank you.
You're welcome. So component one is the bulk of where the leadership team, myself, will be spending our time preparing information for them. I will say that some of the things I have already been working on since I found out we were in this process, and some of them are completed. So there's an organizational chart. We already have an organizational chart. I asked them if we needed to recreate one specific to our department or if that was sufficient. That was sufficient, although the one thing I'm a little hesitant on is it doesn't spell out special education teachers or like paraeducators. It just talks about building level staff. So I don't know if I'm gonna have to make, now that I thought I was all set, I'm like, oh, maybe I need to just add a little piece to that so it's clear.
Good.
I know for a fact, I've asked for a special education specific org chart for at least 3 years now. Nobody else remembers that? Joe?
I remember you asking, not recently, but I remember you asking since I've been back on the board, yes.
I remember you asking some of that, yes.
And we still don't have a special ed specific one.
We're gonna have one now.
I just think it would be in our best interest, because it's a very
Mhm.
complicated department and a lot of people don't even,
Yeah, we know who to go to. Don't have the
So what I
limited knowledge that we might have.
right.
What I can do is, I have the copy of our district organizational chart. I'll basically remove half of it. And then add to, for the special ed, and then add to, the other side to make clear all the different parties that are in that.
Yeah, it would get a little messy if you tried to do it on that.
Yeah, the same one. But I know that even, at the, previously the district, people within the district were having issues with who to go to or who
Mhm. Oh,
oversees
absolutely.
what or who's in charge of this or that. And
Yeah.
I think it would be good to have that on paper, so there's no question about it.
And for any,
Even online.
yeah, if any family who's just starting the process, it's gonna be really
I've
complicated.
been in it for a long time and I still struggle trying to figure out where we're at.
I can retweet that. They look at special education job descriptions, so special education teachers, paraeducators, speech and language, pathologists, occupational therapists, PAs.
That's a lot of people, and to know who is in what level of, the hierarchy of it all is.
Yep.
It's a lot.
So they look at job descriptions, those, are done, so, we don't have to worry about that unless we recently hired or created. So we'll look at it, but, we have nurses, we have psychologists, social workers, counselors, and special education, don't have a PP one, but we contract for that, so they're not necessarily they're gonna be looking at our employees. So I believe we have all of them. they look at a special education policy form, and that is done. That's gonna be one of the first things I submit to them, just in case they say that this no longer matches the rules and you need to change the language in this or that, so that there's ample time to change that. They look at a personnel list with licenses and certifications that is in process. This is an area that districts have gotten caught on in this audit because to work with students with disabilities, the state looks at it as if you need to actually have your special education certification. So if you get a statement of eligibility and you're working on a plan from their lens, that doesn't match meeting the requirements of having a certification. So while it's a critical shortage area and the state recognizes that, so that there's a plan in place to help teachers figure out how to be able to come into the school districts, work with the students and get their certifications in the audit, even if they're in process, if they don't hold it, it does count against us. So this is a situation that's hurting some districts. It is what it is. There's not much that we can do about that, but
Sounds like they're out looking for problems.
When they know there's a critical shortage. Okay.
and then there is a narrative presentation of this that includes various aspects. Some of the things that they're looking for is how the roles within the program intersect and work together. So how do the BCBAs work with the speech and language pathologists? Program meeting schedules, so within the buildings, when are the departments meeting? When are, I meet on a weekly basis with the dean, so like what does that setup look like? How challenges are addressed. This is an interesting one because all the documents I've looked at so far, everybody interprets challenges differently. So we'll have to figure out what we want to write in the section. How progress is being measured, how we're working on improving results. Part of this is proficiency with your content areas, family and community engagement, and then communication with families. Then component 5, again, looks at your file reviews. This is based off of a LEA determination rubric. All districts get them. It's based off of the 23-24. There are 4 different tiers that you can get, and you're graded on a bunch of different things. You can meets requirements, needs assistance, needs intervention, and needs substantial intervention. There are no districts in New Hampshire that are in tier 4. The bulk of the districts in New Hampshire are tier 2, which is where we fall, which is needs assistant. And what I am unclear of, but the numbers really don't matter that much. And the numbers in here were the numbers when I pulled them, so they could be slightly different. Some documents say that if you're tier 2, they're going to review 5, and other documents say they're going to review 7% of students identified within that building. So I'm unclear if it's 5 or 7, but again, it doesn't really changes it by like 1 file. So they're really looking at between 3 to 5 files within each building. And
It's
within
random.
those, they're looking for, again, some of the things I mentioned before are the strengths talked about. There's a section where parents can add input in the IEPs. Even if a parent is happy and pleased with the programming and they don't have anything additional they want to add, you still need to write something to the effect that, parent is happy with and give some actual specifics on what they're happy with. So they will do that. And that is all the Department of Education, our lead consultant, will be doing all of that.
I'm just laughing at the bureaucracy, not that we have to write something, even though somebody didn't say it. Right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right.
Just to ensure they had a voice.
Like the thing we were talking about earlier today, Jody, where I was like, really?
Are these
How-
files,
Right.
these files chosen randomly?
Yes, and they will provide that information to us. They give it to us sometime during the discovery phase, and then they review them during the verification phase. And then next steps, I mentioned right after the holiday break, January 6th. The following individuals will be meeting with the lead consultant from to talk about, again, the process, next steps. I really see the main role of the leadership team being to help support and writing the narratives for the component one aspect and really selling like all the amazing things that Raymond's doing and the areas that we already know that we're trying to improve upon. And then in addition to that, if we need to resubmit applications for our current standing programs, those individuals would be helping with those applications because some of them are best able to talk about what they want the programs to look like, the curriculum, what happens within the details of that program. So myself, the deans, my administrative assistant is on here. Carrie is graciously excited to be on this team. They do mention that they see this team being change agents, right? So that if there are findings and you're trying to make momentum to move forward and to make some changes within the community, that people within the team need to be people that are either vested in change or have the capacity and the ability to move change forward. And then we have a special education teacher on here. We have the BCBA on here. We have a behavior coach on here, and we have a principal on here.
Questions, comments other than what we've already done for Jody? Thank you very much, Jody.
Thanks, Jody.
Have a good night.
Call you in the morning.
Talk to you soon.
Next up. 25-26 default budget. Assuming Marjorie's doing this. Is that right?
Terry was there.
No.
So the default budget is in your packet. The cover page that we do, we compare the approved operating budget for 24-25. And then as you go down that main page, you can see the debt service. So I've adjusted for the bond that we've paid off this year. That's a decrease of $96,677. Then I go through the detail of the budget and I subtract out the one-time expenditures.
Question. On the operating budget number, which is 30.7. That was like less than that. No? Thought it was 3651. Or did you put in something that? I just noticed it now, Marjorie.
I did. I think you're right. And now I'm like, what happened? No, that's the 25-26 budget. This is the approved 24-25 budget. Whoa, really scared me.
It's actually 31,651. Yeah. Thanks. How's that cardio?
Feeling good to begin with. So that just like, I'm like really warm right now.
I looked at it at home and I said, that's fine. And then I come here and did it.
I
Good to check.
Then I go through the budget and I figure out what was one-time expenditures and I subtract that from the budget. So as you can see, there were a ton of piddly things that I don't think typically people would pick up on, but as I was looking at the description and they weren't in there for this year, so it's not like we replace them every year. They weren't supplies. So you can see there's some elementary school wedge/incline mats and spike ball rookie sets, music equipment, I should say middle general ed utility cart, not card.
On this page, it says the school board proposed budget 2025 says 30651. But this book says 31651.
That's for that to that.
Yeah, maybe it's to the reason. I don't know.
Look at that.
Could be a typo.
Yeah, because the rest, I mean, it's the rest of the digits.
That is of 1 million, right? That's pretty significant.
Say that a second ago, but were you just being funny?
Oh my God.
We looked at it and we thought it was great, but it's
Here it says 31 in the book, but over here, It does.
on the computer, it says 30, so I don't know what it looks
Yeah,
like.
no, but I thought like 2 minutes ago, you said, oh, the budget's actually 31,651.
Yeah.
Did I hear that?
Yeah.
Next year, it's supposed.
On the,
Right, but
this
here it's
one that
on
we're
the-
looking at on the computer. So I don't know how, if that
Have to do it
changes
now, then
anything or if
never
it's
mind.
just a typo.
It is,
It might be just a typo.
that was a big swing.
Yeah, that's
Does
the,
that affect your numbers or is it
Yes.
just the chart?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Sorry.
Okay, good catch, Cindy. Okay,
I was afraid to mention it, but
I already had
I was like, maybe I'm wrong.
a phone call we received from John today.
Then that makes the default budget under by,
So,
So,
you got more work on that, right? Is that what you're saying, that the numbers is it? Okay.
I see.
Go ahead, Steve.
okay, so is it I'm looking at the actual Google Doc. And it's not a referential cell, so it's just a text cell. Is it
for the school board proposed budget,
for that line 48, E48? I mean, is it likely that that literally is just a transposition error since it's not actually being pulled from other data?
was,
So
I keyed it in incorrectly.
the rest of it, because I thought I heard somebody say about
Because the 425 now.
so it's really that one line. Okay, because
Notes on here is formulated.
yes, that's what I was looking at. I'm like, I think.
Me too. Okay,
Rather catch it now.
The reason I ask is if it was a formulation,
No,
and it's
that's
wrong,
Then everything.
there's a lot of wrong,
Right.
but if it's a typo, then it's just a typo.
Typo, yeah.
Yeah. But I assumed it was just a typo from what I was looking at, but I wanted to confirm.
I think it's not, yeah, actually it is being looked at, someplace else stuff.
right.
That at least started that.
Okay. So the one-time expenditures, as you can see, that I've subtracted out, those total $44,081. The adjustments to the salaries was a decrease of $70,850. Health insurance, $207,203. New Hampshire retirement, $107,542. And other benefits such as FICA, dental, long-term disability, a decrease of $39,202. Contracted services for students is $619,914,000 increase. No changes in electricity, propane, and oil. Other services, an increase of 5,368. Maintenance contracts, an increase of 11,829. Transportation, an increase of 222,966. Communication and printing, a decrease of 16,976. Special education and vocational education tuitions, an increase of $302,507. So the default budget would be at 31,000,000. I'm sorry, I am reading off of this, not my adjustments. So John had called earlier about the superintendent's salary. So I had,
In the lease. It started out with the lease, I was using superintendent's salary out, and the superintendent's salary needs to go out too. The increase that we signed a contract for, typically it's done afterwards, all this. Rare, because, no, I understand, we have someone, so Marty was caught off balance. So what you're saying is the way you presented it with the lease not being in the default is correct. And the increase we're giving, sorry, as opposed to, like, it's coming down by the amount to reflect this year's actual salary.
correct.
Makes no sense as to, that's the attorney's
Yep,
guidance.
we got Gordon's confirmation today.
I'll probably put it next time. Very fluid, shouldn't be.
So then compared to the default budget is now after that $1 million thing is actually the default budget is under the school board budget by $347,326. 347-326. Joe is ready for his.
Go ahead, Joe.
Why are we, I know Gordon, for some odd reason, said so about the superintendent's contract has always been in the default budget. It's a signed contract already. That's always been in the default budget every time that we've done this. When we've signed it, because we don't sign it after usually March 30th or whatever. It's usually signed beforehand. So that's always been in there. As
And
for
what-
the other any contract that we've signed has always been in the default budget because it's already there. Otherwise, we need to take out transportation, SST, and everything else.
The one thing, Joe, to clarify though, on the superintendent's contract, historically, the superintendent's contract, Terry's was done differently in that we put a raise in his 25, 26 salary, where normally what we've done in the past is said the superintendent's contract will be determined once the wage pool has been approved or not approved. So there is a slight difference or a significant difference there. The others I can't speak to. I said, I'm on the same page with you, Joe, on the contract side. It just, we have a signed lease. We contractually are obligated to pay that lease. And it surprises me that it's not gonna be in the default.
It's a contract that we had put into the budget last year. It was taken out of the budget last year. So therefore, when it was taken out of the budget and the budget was approved, the taxpayers did not approve that budget. So if they didn't approve
They
it,
did approve the savings as a result of those.
then that was a whole other thing.
No, I know, I mean, it's a little contradictory, but okay.
Yeah, we can't sit there and take something out without putting the rest of it back. I mean, you can't take out just what the contract is and keep the savings because now we can't pay the contract. I mean, and with Terry's case, when we and I believe Tony was there when we did this last, when we did raise the salary of the superintendent before that, that was added onto the default budget. It is a signed agreement. We have to pay for it. I think Gordon is absolutely wrong on this because we've talked about this with other things like SST and transportation. We signed it. We have to pay for it. I don't know where all of a sudden Gordon's deciding now we don't have to pay for these things because for years he's told us we signed the contract, we have to pay for the contract. Other districts, on the other hand, and Terry can contest to this, is that they don't sit there and take the default budget. They'll do something else with the contracts and stuff like that. But we've always done it this way because we have to pay for it. If we don't, we still owe the money anyhow.
No, I'm just saying, it doesn't make sense like you're saying, especially if next year takes effect, that's heavy. Why would that not be reflected?
It's live, if you will, for next year's.
Right. That's what my contention is it's not like you can say no. You're like, all right. So, don't know what else we can do. Anybody's got suggestions as to what to do, but
I think we should put the contracts in there that we're supposed to be paying for, and that's the default budget. We'll look at it next time around, so Marjorie can get a better look at the numbers, but that's just my opinion.
And we get the final say on that, is that how that works?
it's the board's default budget. So we have final say on what goes there.
Yeah, I've not been involved with this a ton, obviously, but it does make sense what Joe's saying about how do you sign a contract and then not put it in the budget to pay for it?
So then if, say, for whatever reason, then the default budget passes or the operating budget doesn't pass and then we're going with the minus 347 is here and then run down another, whatever the difference is.
Yeah, it's like a double whammy.
Right, so we're getting whacked twice. Go ahead, Mike.
So what I did do, this year is So the savings for the propane, not propane, the electricity and oil did come out of this current year's budget. But when I brought the default budget over, I did not bring over the 25-26 budget. I brought what was over there because the lease was out. So if the lease is out of the default, then what I carry forward over to the 25-26 was the current year expenditures for oil and electricity.
You took the lease out, but you put the expenses back essentially.
Correct.
Yes,
So electricity is no longer, I'm just gonna say $1. It's
It's what it was.
right, whatever it was.
If we hadn't had the project afford.
right. So like $130,000 was added back into the default budget for those expenses.
One that really was only like 100,000 deduction at the end of the day. You add back in the savings that was already deducted.
But if the lease is over ballpark 260, right?
Yeah.
On the savings, it's pretty close to that.
Right, so when you remove that 260, it's really 100. You add back in the savings that
So you added in 130, Marjorie, and the reason you only added in 130 is because the savings is already taken out the budget we're in today.
Correct.
So that means we are, not realizing full savings either, because we're gonna be up in estimated over 200 in savings, right?
So it's about half.
220, 230.
When you really look at it, it's, the default's about right, because you got 121 for the curriculum coordinator, 44 in SRO, you add that up. I mean, ballpark, that's not what's in the operating budget, ballpark. That's why you're,
Yeah, I'm just trying to get over the hump of this signed contract, but anyways, go ahead, Joe.
With the, contracts, even for the energy savings, putting that back in there, but we still don't have money to pay for the lights that were already done. I guess we're not gonna have there wouldn't be any savings or anything to help us with the heating inside the high school. I mean, the lights are already in. I don't know how the heck we would get away from not paying that. I mean, and I'm sure we would be losing some of the rebates that we've already gotten because there was an energy efficiency project and it was more, not just rebates for one single thing, but we were doing several things at the same time. So I don't know how the heck we would even calculate this.
be a quick one.
Well, we learned a long time ago, we don't say that.
Not my fault. Trying not to.
I guess I'm torn because if we take out the lease and we took out the savings, do we roll them in next year?
This is just strictly the default, not the operating budget that we've approved.
Because the operating budget already has all the savings that we would save with everything that we're already have done and looking to do starting, July.
Right.
And so, I mean, I don't know how the heck, it's almost would be impossible to calculate this going forward because, I mean, we'd still owe the whole amount, but now we're only getting half the product. In my mind, because I can't imagine they're gonna sit, anybody would sit there and say, it's okay. I mean, right now we're at a increase overall. It wasn't much. It was less than already than what we predicted it would be in the first place, I believe. For the overall cost for the district, which was going to be, a lot less than the entire cost of the project.
For the administration recommendation is
oh, legal wise. That just, yeah. Our recommendation, Marjorie.
Is it worth having another conversation?
Gordon? I'm just not gonna hold back on this.
We emailed him first thing this morning and we wanted to make sure we had an answer for you guys tonight. We hadn't heard back from him. And he basically just confirmed what we just
totally. So. Go ahead, Joe.
I mean, again, in my mind, I can't see how we can do it with one or two different contracts if we don't do it to all. So that means the entire thing has to be redone. It doesn't make any sense to do it with just one contract or two contracts. And again, the advice that he gave us with Tina's, it was in the default budget. Because we gave Tina a raise, at the time, or we gave her extra some amount, it didn't need to be approved or anything like that. That's what the board has. The board has the authority to do that. It still has to be paid.
But I think, so typically, Joe, in the past, what we've done is we've built the increases into just the wage pool line, right? So this year, the superintendent was taken out of that calculation because you gave him a separate contract.
Every time we've had a brand new contract for the superintendent, we have no expectations of wage pool. That is a brand new contract that is being signed. A wage pool authorization doesn't move over to the next one. We didn't do it with, Tina. We didn't do it with, anybody. It's a brand new contract. So in that case, we would have to wait for the brand new contract to get past the initial one as well. Because again, it's the same contract. It's brand new.
So I'm gonna jog people's memories. Last year, we went out to bid for transportation. Transportation was up $500,000. Was that in the default or was that taken out of the default?
It depended on when the contract,
It was signed before.
we established.
Yep. Because I was pushing to get it done because the year before, we didn't have that and we got a bind. I was like, whoa. Said, we're gonna make sure that this gets in.
So, but then on top of that, we had to get additional buses for the extra 200,000 that we spent. That came off because we didn't need those an extra.
That wasn't a contract. That was a one-time expense where we were paying for student money to run those buses. So that was a one-time expense. For the contract, I was like, we waited late. It didn't get in default. So last year I was like, we're going to make sure this is in, and it was put in. I'm just using that that's to mine. That's a big contract I know that we had that messed me up my first year and my second year. I went to John and said, we got to do this sooner than later.
I'll be honest, I don't remember having a conversation like this about pulling a major contract out of the default budget. So that leads me to believe that we just left it in. Because I think we would have had this discussion last year. Should this contract stay in, should it take out? And maybe you did it behind the scenes, I don't know. But we certainly never talked about it not going in.
Yeah, I don't, unless we asked the attorney last year about it specifically, it would have probably been put in our default.
Right.
But because John opened his mouth, of course it wasn't in there anyways, because you had already asked. Is that right? Earlier.
We just asked, we just assumed it wasn't. Yeah.
On this has come up with, and I don't know if I'm guessing it was Gordon before, because there are some school districts that do take out the contract for the default budget for transportation the first year. We have always been told not to do that because we have to pay it. It's a contract.
It's a contract that was approved by the voters. Do you know what I mean?
No, nobody approved the contract that we signed for the buses. We approved that. It got put on the default budget. We have never had a contract like that went one-on-one with the voters. Do you want to spend $500,000 more on buses? It's never been done.
I don't know what to do.
So, sorry. So we removed the contracts, and in the case of one of them, and you had also reduced because we had savings, but took the contract out, so added the savings essentially back in. What's the delta there? So what's the difference for the electricity and oil? So not just that, so the whole thing then is about, is it 100, so someone asked this question without. How's this?
The lease is 260. The amount I added back in for electricity and oil is 130. So your delta is 130.
Then you have to take out 120 for the curriculum coordinator, because that's not the default. Now what are you up to? 250. And then you gotta take another 50 out, ballpark, please,
300.
for the curriculum coordinator. You're at your 300,000.
So the default difference is about 300K.
Yeah, 330.
37.
Well-
I
So wait, I thought,
See, part of that default is an additional 2 people. Curriculum coordinator and your SRO. Can't be in the,
so let's calculate. Last year we did this, we came up with a board budget. And there was a default budget based on, I thought, last year's numbers, previous year's information. So right now, we have a board budget. And we're looking at the default budget. Well, the numbers you just gave us, the 31,314 and 31,651. Right? Because the board budget is, so you're saying now that the default would be 31,14? That's 300?
347, 326.
31,347,326.
Asking the difference.
No, the difference I have here,
303, 914.
so that's the 314,295 is the budget without all that stuff in it. So it would be 300,000 more if we added this context back in. I'm trying to figure out which way are we going from the numbers here?
I'm trying to figure out what you're saying. I'm sorry.
No, it's just, me too. Our default budget right now is listed at 31,314,295. That is without the 2 contracts, the 300,000 we were just talking about. All that, the 130 and the 50 and all that. Are you saying if we add those contracts back in, the default goes up to 31,614?
Can't because they're the new positions, right? You can't add them.
We'll add those back into the
They're
deal.
not, they weren't in the.
So that's what I'm asking.
that's why I'm trying to tell you that thing, that's why I'm trying to tell you. Proposed budget is higher than default, because a good chunk of that is because of those 2 positions. 150,000 of that, actually 160,000 of that is because of those 2 new positions. Curriculum coordinator and the SRO.
Right.
They cannot be in the default budget.
If they don't exist.
Correct.
So how can, so we're going back and forth across the line in my mind, because the other stuff that we've already signed contracts for is the other 130. Right? So that should be in the default. Is what we're trying to say. That's
Trying to figure out is to put the lease in. If you put the lease in, then this gets, well,
that's what,
on a slippery slope, because are you gonna take the savings off the electricity or are you leaving them in?
that's kind of where my brain's running. That's why I'm trying to figure out which direction this thing's going. So as it stands, our budget is 347,000 higher than the quote unquote, I'm gonna call it a quote unquote default.
Correct.
Not sure what we're doing with the default.
Correct.
Because if
The alleged default.
the alleged default, because if we do add the contracts back in, then we have to increase the default, the amount of the contracts. So where does the contract go? Why are we even having this conversation if that won't change the default?
That's what we're kind of saying. It's, in my mind, it is $100,000. But it's,
So I got a question.
Okay.
Go ahead. Let's just say the default budget, we can't have the SRO and the curriculum coordinator. The operating budget does not pass, so we have to go to default budget.
Yep.
We not hire those people because that was part of the deal and no means no, or can we
No.
find the bottom line money and hire those people?
it's your budget. They're only approving the amount of the budget. How you spend that money is up to you.
Yes. Yeah, we went through that last year too.
No.
John,
It's 1 minute amount out of it.
No means no, specifically to a warrant article that says we're gonna
we brought a warrant article that said we want to hire these people and they said no, then no, we can't. Go ahead, Joe.
Again, I don't think we can decide this now because one, if we don't have the contract in there, I mean, I'm going to guess that the lease is null and void. We would have to pay for all the lights that we've installed. Everything that we've done, we don't have a lease for lights, switches throughout the schools. We just don't have anything for that. And we would have to pay for those right off the bat. I mean,
Yeah, no, the way I look at this, Joe, is that it, under the attorney's advice, it wouldn't be in there as it's presented to us tonight, right, wrong, or indifferent. We still are we're obligated because we've signed the lease. We're obligated to pay it. We would just have to pay it and find a way to pay it. That's just like any other way with the default. If we have obligations and we want to do something and it's not in the default, we still have to find a way to get that money and do something different than what we had planned originally.
I'm going to use a Mike Elwell term here. Past practices, we have sat there and always put those things in the default because we have to pay them. And the default budget is those things that you have to pay for that were in the, that are there. I mean, that's why I was always amazed when people sat there and said, yeah, we don't put transportation in the default budget. Well, if it doesn't pass, how are you going to pay for it?
So how does it work with salaries? Do you do the next year of the CBA or the current year of the CBA?
That would be a warrant article.
Well, I'm saying
That's
now it's
about-
already passed.
It would go into the next year. You would add those salaries and wages.
So that goes to the, right.
Obligation that was voted on by the voters of the.
I'm just saying, you're already locked into that deal. It's already approved and it's going to increase the next year. Kind of like this, different in my mind. You get past the vote, but I'm saying as far as the increase.
Yep.
So I don't understand why this would be any different.
Yeah, like transportation is probably a better parallel
Yeah,
there,
but-
because we've got a contract that will increase. And it's not,
Okay, so yeah.
yeah, that way we took you go with,
Yeah, so eliminate the vote because the vote's inconsequential.
Right.
So do you go with the upcoming year cost of the transportation contract or the previous year?
One more time, Tony, I'm sorry.
So when we budget for transportation, we're going by what the coming year's contract is, the increase gets totaled in there and that goes to default, right?
Yes,
So is it,
that's the,
so why is this?
that I don't know. That's the conundrum I'm seeing here myself.
For the most part, when you're looking at transportation, the big increase is special education transportation anyway. It's not anything else. In special education transportation, our hands are tied by that.
That's a contracted increase, right?
But even
It's like his,
that's more of a student base increase.
but I'm saying, it's an increase, you're getting it, so you budget for it. I don't understand how this increase is any different.
so the regular ed transportation contract for the regular buses, 15, whatever buses we have. That's a regular contract that we have complete control over. We signed a 3-year deal. We paid X last year. This year it's X plus a percent. Next year it's X plus a different percent.
Right.
So that's a perfect parallel here because it's a contract we've signed. We have to budget for the increase in the regular ed transportation because we signed a contract that says we'll take we're gonna pay 5% more next year than last year. So I think so we have to put that in the default. Why would not anything we sign that says we agreed to pay this year after year be part of the default? Why wouldn't it be part of the default? Because we've got a contract that says we have to pay this payment. If we don't put it in the default, how do we pay for it? And my question now is, if we don't do it now, does it become default next year?
Yeah, it would be because, if it's a default, yeah.
But if it's not default this year, is it default next?
If we were past the default, because we've already paid it, then my interpretation would be that it would be part of the default going forward because we've paid it. That's why. Right, so I think we're gonna move forward. I don't know if we can do anything other than entertain a motion. I don't know what else to do other than that on this specific topic, or these two specific topics.
Can I ask one last question before we do a motion? What happens if it doesn't, what happens if we don't, if we choose not to do anything?
The default budget is, at this point, is what the administration presented to us. If we say no or yes, depending on what the motion is, right? If somebody makes a motion to include something that's not there now and it doesn't pass, then it just stays where it is now.
So,
'Cause I know in the past we've added or subtracted things, I think in the past, I don't remember specific instances, but I recall some of those happening.
so we're
I'll
just,
make-
we're just agreeing on what the default budget would be.
Well, we haven't decided what we're gonna do. I just thinking that to move this conversation along, I think a motion would be in order so that we can move things along. Go ahead, Joe.
I'll make a motion to, accept the default budget, and include, the contracts with the superintendent and the EEI grant, EEI. Say, contract.
We get a second, then we can converse.
I'll second.
Second by Steve. Go ahead, Terry.
You're gonna have to remove the savings. You gotta take out the electric and the gas and all that. Right?
Why would you?
Because the lease is saying that there's gonna be savings. The contract is saying you're gonna have savings, but yeah, I'm just,
Okay,
Yeah.
the situation is. I see where you're coming from, because right now, as Marjorie told us. She hasn't included, for example, the high school having $1 for electricity, it's probably $80,000 or $100,000 in electricity.
every last year's budget.
So that if we include 260,000 in round numbers for the lease, then we have to start subtracting out elsewhere,
Dollar and
whatever the,
electricity.
except for where it's in the current, the savings that are already here in this budget, okay,
Does that make sense?
does to me.
Well, what I struggle with is now we're getting into hypotheticals here because if we, it's not like we're not gonna get the savings if we don't put the lease in the default budget. We're still gonna get those savings, huh? It's not like all that goes away.
At least in the budget, we're gonna get the savings. Bless you. Because we have to pay for it one way or the other.
Right,
We're still gonna have the thing.
Yep.
It's still gonna work the same way.
Yeah, so the LEDs are still gonna charge, cost us less, regardless of where we put this.
right,
This is still gonna be a savings on electricity.
but I think. Right,
What I'm confused here is why are we acting like, I just don't understand how if that money going back and forth is contingent on whether we put the cost of contracting, we're still gonna realize those savings are still gonna happen.
yeah,
So it's like, can we play that game?
well, to me, I think, having heard this conversation. Back to John here, I think the default has to include the saving. In that, because we know we have to pay the lease. And we're gonna see savings as a result of that. But that's just, the way I do it, but again, I'm gonna go with the advice of Gordon, I don't like the advice. Sometimes the attorney doesn't give us advice we like when we get the answer past practice.
Can I, as you're talking about the savings? Don't forget that total I gave you of the 130. So that has the savings, but it also has the increase for the high school propane and for the high school wood chips. It's that difference too.
Yeah, in the sense that, wood chips is less expensive than the oil. And I think it's even less expensive than with the propane added in, right? The oil is more expensive than it's combined.
But what I'm getting at is we're still gonna see those savings and we don't account for that. I kind of feel like that would be fraudulent. Like,
I think I'm agreeing with you in that. I think the default needs to show those savings.
yeah,
And
whether we put the lease in or not.
correct.
If you don't put the lease in, you're paying the lease. You know what I'm saying?
Some other means.
Yes.
And we're still realizing the savings.
Right, that's the hang up for me is, it doesn't change the savings, so
Roger.
we can't limit it.
Yeah.
I just feel like that's disingenuous to be moving that around contingent on whether we're gonna get it or not. If that makes sense.
So I just, I'm looking for the electric line. I thought it was in the Raymond High School section.
It's throughout everywhere. So if you're looking at the high school section, that would be under 500,624.
That sounds like stuff. That's right. I don't see it in this version.
Is that the budget? Which one is that, Steve?
This is the one from last night.
Page 19.
Go to your detail expenses by object code.
That's what I was, because I'm actually in the section,
Second tab.
Got paid school oil 6549.
page 19.
It's like,
Okay, I was looking in the wrong spot. That's why I was trying to figure out, like, I know I'm looking in the wrong spot. I can't find it.
Yeah, it's yours from last night, Cindy. Page 19.
It was high school electric, yeah. So is this number the 79,567? Is that with the savings or without?
I don't know what numbers you're talking about, Sue.
The high school electric line, this, if I'm reading this right, 500,622. I thought you said 624, but 622 is here. High school electricity.
I thought you said oil.
I might have, I meant electric, I apologize.
That's okay. So the high school electricity was 425, 7950, 567.
And then next year it's listed as $1. You're saying we'd have to add that. The conversation right now is the recommendation is the lease is out, the projected savings have to go back in as an expense. So we go up by 79,567.
That's immediate.
What's the community? Yeah.
Get it this time. The motion on the floor is to include, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, the superintendent's contract for 25, 26, the higher rate, the higher salary, plus the lease payment for the bank. So we should
Correct.
add our conversation to that. So not try to get into, because we can tackle the next things next. So that we don't
Correct.
the waters.
Because in my mind, it is unrealistic to say, because the default budget's always been stuff we have to pay for. And to sit there and say, you know, it's out of default budget, but we still have to pay for it. Well, we're not giving a realistic account of what we have to do to the voters. We have to pay for it.
Does anybody else have anything else they want to add before we take a vote? All right.
I'm more confused than I was when we started.
Let me say it again, or you?
I'm good.
Okay. All right, so all those in favor of the motion, which is again to approve.
Did we get a second?
Yeah, I second that.
Second it. What's that? Thank you. We have to, recap again, just to make sure. We're adding in Terry's contract, the difference between what we're paying him for 25, 26 and the current contract. I don't remember that number. But then also adding in the payment for the bank for the lease that we have. Well, that's the motion. So all those in favor? Oh, well, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go Steve. Yeah, Steve, yes.
Tony, yes. Cindy,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
myself, no. All right, so motion passes 4-1. All right, anybody have anything else do you have anything else you want to discuss before we get too far into the weeds on the default? Audrey or Terry?
So adding in the lease, did that include the savings of the electricity?
We haven't discussed that.
Okay.
It was just the lease.
Okay.
That was the motion, nothing else. That's why I asked, is there anything else you wanted to add before we start trying to take care of the housekeeping on the other side?
Right, I'm following, I'm getting a little nervous, because I start following more and more as I get.
All right.
John talking, I'm all over it.
I said, sorry for you, Tony.
In another country, sorry, eventually you just start speaking their language.
Anyway,
Guys hand up again.
go ahead, Joe.
I don't know if we were moving on to the next topic, if it should include the savings, but in my mind, yes, it should include the savings.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure Marjorie was all set with presenting everything she wanted to present, but then yes, I'm looking for a motion to do whatever anybody wants to do next. Which.
So I guess, well, I guess before that, I have, the question is are the savings in the default today? Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out which way we're calling this motion. Go ahead, Joe, I think you were ahead now.
What was did Marjorie say they were inside it or no?
She shook her head now.
Okay.
Shook her head now. Joe, you're supposed to read her mind.
Sorry, the energy savings are not in the default budget.
Okay, then I sit there and I will make a motion, put the energy savings in the default budget.
Was that again, Joe? I didn't hear that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I will make a motion. I will make a motion to put the energy savings in the default budget.
Meaning to reflect the savings.
One minute.
Let's get a second and then we can have an explanation. I want to make sure I know what I'm seconding. Well, if you second it for discussion, yeah, and you're not obligated to. Okay, so you can ask me clarifying. So you mean by putting in, you mean to reflect the savings or to add the deduction back in?
Is that the same thing?
No,
No, one adds money and one takes money out. Right now, Joe, Marjorie has all those savings, or actually hypothetically, or not hypothetically. The default, I mean, the operating budget for the high school for electricity is $1 for 25-26. If we were to have the default reflect the savings, then the default would be $1 also at the high school. Right now, it is $80,000.
What it was approved for this year.
Oh, and then I think it should be to reflect the savings.
And the additional expenses. High school propane, for instance, and the chip. High school
Yes,
chips.
yes. Everything that is involved with it, because that goes a 2 cents to the boot is what things are going up.
What's the best way to word it so it fits what you needed to say? Because I see that look on your face, which is we can't leave stuff out of this list because they'll throw the balance off.
when you subtract the savings and then add back in the other stuff, or just the number.
What's the other?
The reason I'm asking is I want to make sure. So what Joe said was to reflect the savings, but I don't know if we need to add for all the related items, because if it's that wording that throws off what she can do, I want to make sure it says, I think that's the intent. And I think that's our drive, is to put it all back the way we thought it was going to be. But I want to make sure we say it in the way that they can do it as we intend it and not as we said it.
I think they reflect accurately.
Yeah.
How about to reflect the savings that were introduced during our budget presentation?
And you need to include.
Which I hear.
And what would be the number?
One minute.
No?
Joe, you're amending your
Leaving everything for the
motion? Or you?
Well, I mean, I'm just asking right now, would you rather see it that way? Because I don't have the numbers directly in front of me.
No, I understand. I just wanted, all right.
So should we list each item individually?
Audrey, what was because you had something a while ago, so.
I was just gonna suggest maybe wording it to say adjust for the savings that are accounted for in the 25-26 budget for electricity and oil, with the adjustment for the increased cost for the propane and the wood chips.
Perfect.
Second.
So moved on that one. I'll amend my motion.
Or how about withdraw it? Joe, I think to amend it, you know.
I will withdraw my initial motion.
Tony, sorry. I withdraw my second. Okay, and then go ahead, Joe.
And I will forward in a motion exactly what Marjorie said.
Yeah.
Okay.
was gonna say, can we just do that? Cause I,
The second should be full.
That was at 8:02.
did we get a second?
Second.
Jen, can you give us a heads up if you're following all this? I don't wanna, I wanna make sure you're all set, Jen.
I am following it, and I do have that motion that Marjorie said.
All right, very good.
Wow.
Jennifer. Thanks, guys.
I'll give you something special to add to it for
I'm just trying to think of a situation where this is a similar situation, so. And I can't think of anything with it. So I'm having a hard time trying to figure out what I want to do. So right now, just to clarify, the default as high school line is some 80 or something, whatever it is, to reflect what we actually spent or spending, budgeted spent for 24, 25. Okay. Thank you. All right. Any other questions, comments on this? So,
I do, but it's gonna just make it work.
in essence, we're reducing the default a little bit.
So that's what I was gonna, isn't it essentially
Not a wash, like, yeah.
it's pretty close to a wash?
No, because again, as Marjorie said, it's about 130,000 that we're, in essence, we would be reducing from the default because there are savings this year that are already in the 24-25 budget. So, right, and that's where that comes, because in theory, the savings that we're basing all this work on is over 200,000 in savings. Right.
Yes, it will work out to pretty much a wash, but just not within this,
It's not the way the math works tonight.
just not so much. Okay.
All right, any other questions, comments on this motion? Those in favor? Sorry, I'm gonna do poll. I get old habits. Steve?
Yes.
Tony? Yes. Cindy?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Myself, yes. All right, anything else on this? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, batting again. Review of the 25-26 estimated revenue market.
I didn't print it out. It's online. So, our adequate education grant is decreasing by about $700,000. We are raising.
Keep going, just give a quick synopsis as to what happened there, just I don't know, we're running a little late already, so.
So our estimated 24-25 membership, so you have to remember they're kind of like a year in arrears.
Yeah.
So the base adequacy for 24-25, the estimated, membership was,
Average David.
yep,
Okay.
was 1,079. The base adequacy aid that we get per student is $4,265.64. Our ADM for free and reduced is 287 students. The free and reduced differentiated aid would be multiplied by that, and that amount is $2,392.92. Then we have special ed aid. So our population for that for ADM is 216. Multiplied by the differentiated aid for the special ed is $2,185 around. Then we have English language learner aid. So then they take our population for that, 8.65, and multiply it by $832.
All I'm trying to get to is, did our average daily membership reduce, or did the state aid increase?
So the state aid's been going up.
I thought so.
So, I think in the past, what they would do is they would only increase it by a percentage, whatever that percentage was, every couple of years. Now they're actually at the point where they're giving us a little increase each year, around 3%.
But what I'm trying to figure out is it's like, what, $600 or $700,000?
Them. That's what.
That's significant.
Yes.
Um,
I haven't I haven't analyzed the ADM, but the other thing that Raymond has been receiving is they gave us a hold harmless grant for 24-25.
The whole harmless is because of students not attending Raymond at a charter school, for example.
So they started doing that last year. They instituted this grant to ensure that the districts were not losing funds. But what they decided to do at that point when they decided to give the school districts that was that they're going to decrease that to 20% over the 5 years. So
Down to nothing, is that right?
until they get, and for 5 years until it gets, that whole harmless grant is gone. So, we received for this year, $1.2 million. That's the decrease. So our estimated for next year is $268,000, which is, it's going to be a decrease of $242,000 each year.
Go ahead, Joe.
Yes, does do our revenues because I know they decided they were gonna decrease what we were going to get in the middle of the year this year. Is that also going forward for next year?
Are you referring to the special education aid?
Correct.
So in speaking with that department as we were preparing the revenues, you increased that for this current year from, I think, $200,000 to $300,000. And Jody feels like that will be a good enough number for 25-26 as well. So we left that for $300,000 for next year. However, I did decrease the Medicaid revenue because we have not been coming. So I don't know if you remember, like 4 or 5 years ago, we used to receive about $300,000 for Medicaid revenue. And with all the changes that they've made, we've been seeing significantly less revenue for that. I decreased that a few years ago from $350,000 to $175,000. We are still not receiving that $175,000. So for next year, I decreased it to $125,000.
Are those decreases, I know like you have to get things signed differently and stuff like that now. Were those imposed by the federal government or by the state itself? Because I know that kind of runs downhill on that stuff.
That I'm not sure, Judge.
I think the state has more, the feds have a certain restriction and the state's restrictions are a little more stringent, Joe.
That's what I thought, but I just want to double check.
Do you want me to look into that for you?
If you could ask Jody about it, yeah.
Posed by state? Or
Yeah, if you could put that in the Friday memo. I like this week, so I'm glad you had such to it.
Got back to school, you know?
But
do you want me to continue with the adequate education?
anything
I
that
tried-
you feel is necessary to go over, I mean, because we've already kind of hit the state part. And we've somewhat the federal, right? Because we talked about Medicaid, we just didn't talk about federal grants. We always do 720.
Yeah.
That goes back.
Yep. In regards to your ADM question, John,
Yeah.
I was trying to take all of these prior adequate education sheets that they have, and I tried putting together my own little spreadsheet.
Yep.
It's very complicated because some years they have additional lines, some years they don't have lines. So I was trying to work on something for you guys and kind of follow the bouncing ball. But for the most part, I will take a look at the ADM and see if I can get that.
And no, I just asked because it seems like we're talking $600,000 and
A lot of kids do not show up.
it just depends on more to it.
Yeah.
Because we only get 4,200 for a student. That's like 200 kids not going to school.
There's not 200 kids not going to school.
That's not what this says.
I know.
But anyways, if you could just investigate, obviously we have.
And then, so as we go through the revenues, so the state education tax, that's increasing by $100,000. The building aid, it has a slight decrease, and that is because that will be the last year of the bond. So when we get into 26, 27, we will not be receiving that revenue anymore, but we also won't be paying for the bond. Special education aid, like I just indicated to Joe, we increased that to $300,000 this year, and we're going to leave that the same for 25, 26. Vocational charter and child nutrition, those typically come in about $32,000. So for this total state revenues, we're receiving about $600,000 less. The federal grants, we are leaving the same. Just because now that we've received some of those extra grants, the ESSER, the Project Aware and stuff like that, those will be going away now. So that should be close to what we should be receiving. Medicaid revenue, I'm reducing that by about $50,000 because again, that's about what we've been receiving. Child nutrition is pretty close to $200,000. Sometimes it will be 195, sometimes it will be 203. So I'm good with that number. Food service sales, we're going to leave at $375,000. Tuition, indirect fees, impact fees, and interest, little decrease there.
Had we estimated like 80,000 in the impact fees? And we actually got like 32. What they're projecting
For this year.
They're projecting the 32. Well, that's what I was worried about because we estimated 80,000 as part of that 159, and we're estimating 50,000 less than that. That's what I'm just curious that maybe that estimate is not.
I think that's
It might be too high, and that's I'm just. You know what, better than me, certainly. That's all I'm asking is because unless something else went up significantly.
Did that number go up and down and you just kind of have a baseline number that you estimate for?
Try to base
Like some years it might be 200, some years like it might be 30, like you said, and then.
It was an increase for a little bit. So you guys actually have a policy where I actually have to send the town a letter in like August. And I thought the reason for that was because their calendar year ends 12/31. But I think they must do some accounting stuff on their end where maybe they account for it on 12/31, but we haven't been receiving it until like January, February. But it just kind of would have been nice, like even if I send out that letter, if I could get an update on it for when we finalize the tax rate, because I could increase or decrease it on that rate, but I never know.
We'll kind of get it like an idea where it's at that point.
Yeah.
I bet if you ask now, they could help you with that.
John, when I went in, I said, how much? Oh, yeah, he did.
You said it's 32,000 going on.
No, he told us it's 32,000. All right.
So I send them a letter in August, like it would just be nice. Maybe I could just add that to the letter. Like, hey, if you guys could let me know before we set the tax rate, so I
Or if a significant amount comes in to just make you aware or keep you.
Right.
I mean, I don't think it'd be that difficult to keep you up to date on what that's at.
Exactly.
If they're anticipating a large amount of money just to give you a heads up, so maybe to help you.
Thanks, Tony. And then the after school program fees, an increase of $3,000, and before school program fees, an increase of $25,000. So your total decrease for total revenues is about $600,000. Again, most of that is due to the state and Medicaid. So then if we look at the general fund operating expenses from one year to the next, the total expenses for 24-25 are $30,723,861. Our new budget, our proposed budget is $31,604,591. That's the estimated revenues. So your increase in the net operating budget is $1,502,028. Divided by the net assessed valuation, we're looking at $1.12 per thousand increase.
Good. So the operating budget is, we'll say 31 million. The town is actually on the hook for 22 of that. Is that how I'm reading this? The town obligation? How much does the town contribute to that 31 overall? Yeah, what? 22?
Well, yeah, if you look at above, yeah, it's they're getting estimated 9 million from other than property taxes.
Right.
Actually, it includes state property taxes.
Right.
But the taxpayers of Raymond are paying the entire 31 million. That's correct. Their contribution is 23 roughly.
Or so, yeah.
That's a good call, actually.
Well,
I don't know if a lot of folks don't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're all $31 million.
Right.
They just see the tax
Get
rate.
the kids to come to school and that number will go down. Get more money from the state.
Anything, else from the estimated? Any questions, comments for Marge before we move on? Thank you, Marge. All right, next up. Warrant 2025 warrant articles. We have two articles at this time that we need to go over.
Jen informed me that you've already moved on the first one. Did your motion that actually said warrant articles, so you only need to take action on the second one.
Yeah,
Hello, thank you, Jen.
Sorry.
Got the yes too from her.
yeah, sorry about that, John. We spoke
No, that's
about that
fine.
earlier and I missed that the minutes actually do approve the warrant article itself. So that CIP one is done already.
But does it, I guess my question is this formally putting it on the warrant? Because usually that's a ceremonial, since, because you have to get it on there.
That's the motion that approved the CIP actually did approve the warrant article as well. I didn't realize that when we spoke.
All right. We were better than we thought we were at that time. All right, thanks, Jen. All right, so the next one, the next one, the only one, I guess, really, is the surplus funds, capital reserve funds, and the one that is in front of us is what was last year. And my memory, though, is when we had discussions this season, either in the summer and the fall, I had mentioned, let's put it all on the 100 in the maintenance, because we already now have 300,000 special education as a result of the 200,000 from years in the past and the 100,000 from March late. Also understanding that the contingency fund, that or the 2.5% is up around 450. So that gives us about $800,000 in emergency needed money in essence, because that capital reserve fund is for if we have an emergency and we're in trouble on the budget. So that's what I thought we last left it, but we didn't do any motions on it. So I'm just bringing that conversation back, and maybe people remember it differently, but that's my memory.
So you're just saying this would become all 400 to,
What I suggested previously, yes, and I still feel that way because again, we have,
because we have filled the special ed.
I think with the 300,000, unless Marjorie and Terry feel otherwise, the 300,000 in CRF, and then like I said, you can use the contingencies on the 2.5%. Or
So I do have another question.
go ahead.
Sorry. I know we're already running late, and I'm sorry, but
No, go ahead.
as you are all probably very aware, the CIP committee was an interesting process. It's the best way to say it. But the one thing that we did all agree on was that we are all woefully underfunded in our CRS. I don't think that's a for anyone to come to agreement on. We all get that. One of the things that we talked about was how do we increase what we need? So, I mean, in ballpark numbers, Marjorie, like how much are we underfunded in general? Do you know? I'm sorry, I just cut that part again.
In general,
Over all of them,
we were in the based on the needs assessment, it's like 4 million or something.
Yeah, I think the woefully doesn't cut it.
Yeah, that's
substantially. We're a combination. So we have a couple, 2 million in our CRFs, is that correct? Total.
So
I just want to make sure.
I've not adjusted for the additions that we've put in yet, because not all the money's been transferred yet. So you're probably looking at 2.5 million in equipment facilities, a little bit over $200,000 for food service, about $500,000 in tech, and $300,000 for the special ed capital reserve.
And that's,
it's balanced, right?
yeah, that's current. And what do we,
I'm approximately.
right, yeah. But, so that means we have about 3.35 million total. That's my quick math is anywhere near, okay. What is our total need? We're fully funded. Should we be at? What's the question? Should we be at?
6 million.
Or if you add that.
10 million.
To that.
Well, yeah, we have a list, right? We have a CIP list that tells us where we need to be. What's our target?
Whatever the needs assessment said we should have, adding, appropriations, you just add those two numbers, right? Right.
We operating at
So-
7%.
Right.
The needs assessment for 25-26 is almost $5 million.
In appropriations.
So even if we just go by that, we're 2.5 about, no,
More than half not there.
yeah.
And that does not include special ed though, because we don't have special ed in CIP, so.
So really it's,
That's if we want to drain all of that too.
So we're about, like I said, we're about 5 million short of where we would ideally be today. In 25, 26.
we have 2.5.
Yeah.
Or 3 if you include tech. We need 5. Yes. So we're at the very minimum, 2 million underfunded. And
But then that leaves us at zero.
Be clear.
right, which we can't be at
Overdraft.
As opposed to trying to raise and appropriate what we're doing, which is 549 currently with what exists today in ballpark. Plus, if we do the 400, that's about 950,000. We're short raising by 4 million.
right. This is
Roger,
I'm driving down this road
I
for a
just want to make sure
specific
everybody's clear that.
direction. So right now, and it's to that point of the 400, which is a great number. And I'm glad we're able to do it when we have the excess. I'm going to call it the surplus funds. My question / request is there a way for us to adjust this? So last year we gave back 1.2, is that right?
Millions.
A million?
Let's make it a million.
So,
Limit, that's how much we can have to keep, but
well, the warrant article says we can keep up to 400.
We could make it a 10 million if we wanted.
So my thought
Is
is,
that an absurd number?
is there a way for us to word this? Because I'm not saying we shouldn't give anything back. I think we can find a better balance. That if, I just don't know what the legalities of wording it are. It's like, could we say if it's 400, if it's X dollars or lower, or can we say, oh, we'll maintain 50% of what the surplus is for the CRF up to a certain number, and then everything else can go back to the town. Because what that might help us do, because we have significant numbers we've been giving back. And I'm happy to give back to help folks out at the end of the year. But we are $5 million behind. And 400,000 a year is great, or 800,000 a year is great, but when we're spending 750 of it on repairs, it's been referred to as our checkbook, and I hate that. But that's the appearance, is that we're putting money in to take money out, but it's because we're underfunded.
Let's be clear though. We're not spending 750. We're not even close. We're below
Yeah.
the last few years. We've been, what, 350 to 4 at max? So we're taking in 50,000 from the 100,000 from the CRF, plus the 400. So we added probably 500,000 in this last year, the 24, 25.
So we raised through the first one, we got 550, the one to 500,
It was about 500 probably.
and then we spent about 500.
No.
That's what I'm asking.
That's Margaret had, can,
So, just, again, the reason I'm asking these questions, I'm trying to establish the basis for what I'm trying to say.
is we're gonna keep perpetuating the underfunding. Yeah.
We'll continuously be underfunded. We'll never, ever catch up. And there's a perception by some folks in our community is that we're basically using it as a secondary budget. It's a very big misconception that we're not doing it right, but they're basing it on, they think we're spending wrong instead of saving wrong. So I firmly believe we're having a problem with the saving, not the spending. I think we do a great job of controlling our expenses. If we don't do things that don't really need to, we cut things when we can. We have battles about cutting things that we don't want to cut. Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
So the warrant article that was approved last year for the CIP was 499,125. We spent 317.
So
317.
317.
So we had a little bit of savings, and I'm going to call it, if you balance those two out, we raised 5, we spent 320, 180 of that, which should go to funding. You see what I'm saying? So
And then another,
we had 3 sets we come back to.
then another 300 though from the surplus. So we really did fund it by about $500,000.
We added that because we did it from the surplus, and because we had the second warrant article.
Right.
my suggestion is we increase the second warrant article so that when we have significant numbers, when we have significant surplus funds at the end of the year due to teachers not being hired or whatever the reasons. My suggestion is I just don't know the right formula. We take half of what's left at minimum and put it in the the CRS until we can get closer to caught up, because it's money the taxpayers have already been paid into. It's not an excess raise. We're not asking for money above and beyond. It's leftover money because we couldn't hire folks, or we had whatever the salaries benefits lines. I don't know. Again, this is all new stuff for me. I see us sending back $500,000 to $1 million every year and still being underfunded when it comes to doing projects. And I just don't know how we catch up unless we take some sort of drastic action. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Joe.
Um, for this reason, especially for this year, we've done a significant amount of help with our CIP, with the EEI contract. You know, we've greatly reduced the needs at the high school, the middle school, hopefully maybe a year or two, next year or the year after that. And where we have the teachers, you know, a possible teachers contract coming up and stuff like that right now. I mean, because the way we word it, the next school board really does. I mean, if we have $300,000 or we have $400,000 in excess funds at the time, we have to put that in there. And I don't think increasing it right now is such a great idea, especially when we've already saved our CIP, you know, close to $1 million, I think, this year alone now.
Or yeah, this is
Wait a minute, Steve. Go ahead, Joe.
yes, sir.
No, that's it.
Okay, all right, go ahead, Steve.
I was gonna say, yeah, this is a unique year because of that. Because we were able to leverage the project to pay for stuff that we would have had to pay for out of CRF funds. Yeah, that's my pitch. It was an ongoing conversation to try to increase our CRFs. So I wanted to bring it up, and to see if there was something we could do. I agree with you, Joe. We did a great job this year. Next year, we're going to be sort of back to zero and still underfunded by somewhere between $3 and $5 million. So, maybe 2 to 3.
No, it'll be probably north of 5 million.
So it'll be even more. So every year the gap gets bigger. Things down the can, right? So then
this year.
Right. So the further you kick things down, the more they kind of like start stockpiling in the same year. And then that's when we come to you guys. We're like, okay, where do we want to move things around?
Or we go to a bond, which then the taxpayers pay more for because we're paying the principal, which is the same amount, plus any interest that shows up. I mean, it truly is economically better for the town not to bond stuff if we can avoid it. But at some point in time, we're going to hit a critical mass. We have things to pay for and no money to pay for it. So I just don't, you know, I just think we need a plan to try to increase that, even if it was 450 this year, try to increase it so that we can try, you know, we have one really good year of catch up, which is awesome, but this is my 3rd year doing budget, and this is the first time I've seen an increase. So,
So of the 300 and change spent out of the CRF, was the 260 of that in the lease payment? What did we spend that on?
That hasn't been
That
spent.
hasn't been accounted yet.
So that's 350 on it.
And it's not until June. At that point, we got, yeah.
The motion, I think, to move things along for the surplus funds. What would people like to see the number to be? And where does it go?
I'll make a motion that we adjust the warrant article to raise and appropriate up to 450,000 from surplus, with 100% of that going to, say, this is the maintenance, is that we have a maintenance here?
Currently, yeah. Get a second,
I'll second.
discussion?
I have a question. So this is the one that we normally do 400 and you're saying put it up to 450? Just to get us
Yes.
a little further ahead now.
Yeah, I'm not gonna split it, just because again, we're trying to do so much this year. I'm worried about trying to get everything passed that we're doing now. So I would.
I have a question.
I would not speak. Go ahead, Cindy.
So the 400 is already in motion, like, we don't have to.
That's a vote we take each year.
But it usually passes.
It has passed. I don't think, ever since we started it, it started out like at 50,000. And then went to 75, and then we went up, I think, 75 to 400, didn't we, Joe, or something like that?
Around COVID time, I think.
Correct.
Yeah.
So we're gonna
I
have
think
to
it's always
still pass that at 400.
Yeah. So, but again, we haven't tried it. It's, I'm just like, oh, I won't say anymore.
Yeah, and it is. And I know probably the folks watching, but it is from surplus funds. It's not a secondary raise in appropriate. There's no additional tax impact. Whatever this number becomes.
All right, any other questions, or discussion? All right, I'll do a poll vote correctly.
Okay, so what the motion is that we go for 450.
And it all goes to maintenance. It's the same warrant article that was done the previous years, except for last year. Where it goes, everything goes to maintenance. The other exception is that, the motion is to increase it from 400 to 450. Right, Tony? Yeah.
No, I was just wondering about the wording, but to raise and appropriate if it's already been raised, still applied.
That still has to be the way the wording is. Yeah. All right. Steve,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Cindy,
I go with no.
Joe,
You're muted.
Oh, yes, sorry.
and myself. No, so the motion passes 3-2. Right, so that will go on the warrant with a 3-2 vote. I will say, I support it. I just didn't support 50. That's all.
I know what you're saying.
I just want to, because now it looks like 3-2 and I've always supported it. But anyways, I can't do anything about that. I'm just making everybody aware. Right. Anything else?
And on the fence, but you gotta start somewhere. you
Yep,
know.
that's fine. All right. We did one article, so nominations, we don't have any, or resignations. Town/school services for continued discussion regarding payment for school trash services. We had talked about this a number of times. We've gotten the response from the town in that they're not interested in having a conversation with us. We have to, have that conversation with through the town manager, through Terry. That was a no. So the question becomes, are we gonna do anything about the trash, us paying for trash, and they continue to get something for now, in essence, for free? What is the wish of the board? Tony, you would recuse yourself, and we had talked about this last time, but obviously you had a choice what you do this time.
Well, I think I should still have some kind of say in how we,
I'm not saying what,
I don't, personally, I won't say flat out that I don't see it as, anyone getting anything for free. Because there's still other things in play, but it's getting late and I don't want to start that argument right now.
I'm not even gonna, right, Joe?
I mean, it's already, I believe, added into our budget.
Right,
Right
the
now,
question-
I don't think we should be, playing the game back and forth with, billing the town, billing, whoever. Right now, I do want to sit down with the select board if we have to ask for an agenda item or whatever. And put the plowing into writing, because again, one of the biggest committees that I was on, and everybody supported things. And I understand that the town hardly does any trash for themselves, so.
Anybody else want to weigh in before we?
Yeah,
Right,
I
Vicky.
just want to say that I agree with Joe on putting things into writing that are being done. I don't agree with charging the town for services because we still pay for all this stuff. Like it's still the taxpayer money. So whichever way we do it, it still comes out of the taxpayers. So, because I feel like, and there are other services which I have learned. So I would not support or vote for charging. But I do support also writing things down from here on out so that we don't get into this situation again in the future.
So, no action there. All right, next up, new revised policies, first reading. First policy is IC school year. This is, per changes in the RSA. So these are pretty much dictated to us, these changes. Questions, comments about policy IC school year? Next one.
I'm not saying, one of my favorite ones.
IHAM, health and exemption from instruction. And again, this one is revised to reflect updates in another RSA. So a change in that. The question, comments on IHAM? All right, next policy is JLF, reporting child abuse or neglect. And this one is, revised after consultation with representatives from DCYF and Granite State Children's Alliance to improve reporting and record requirements to provide mandate for annual training as now required by another RSA. Question, comments on policy JLF?
I don't know about IHAM, but we can go back to that after we're done.
Okay, we only do the, yeah, only want to go.
No, we do it when we're done with, we'll go back.
Next one is JLP, parental notification of an involvement of student welfare. This is a new one. This, per New Hampshire School Board Association, this new sample policy was created in response to passing HB 1312, which among other things create a new paragraph in RSA 186 and requires a policy relating to disclosure to parents of information concerning students' mental, emotional, and physical health. Questions, comments on JLP?
So that's the reason why I am changed. 1312 is what's
Yeah, combination of,
yeah, 18611 and HB 1312.
any other questions, comments about JLP? All right, I'll back the bus up. Go ahead. On policy outreach.
So the red just specifies that the superintendent shall develop procedures to allow parents to inspect instructional materials to do with health and sex education, all that. Can we just make that readily available or just send it to people so they don't have to ask and they can, like, just to remove that layer of, is there any reason why we can't just make it readily available? If we're teaching to our kids, I mean, it shouldn't be something that people can't see. And then people can't, it's there, they would like put it online. Yeah, like if it's this big of an issue and people are that concerned about it.
We've had one person ask for it.
Not yet.
No. Well, they could ask for it now, and still object.
Right.
They could object to anything.
But just, I mean, we could, as a gesture of, I don't know, transparency or whatever, just put it out there because it's not an issue now, but there's always, you know, some people that object to things that I just feel like that's something that then they can say, oh, they're teaching this, they're teaching that. It's there, everyone can see it. There's no question. There's no, you know what I mean,
That's what you guys want me to do. We can do it.
but that's just something that I feel.
You don't see anything that we,
I mean, I just gotta figure out how to do it.
yeah, it's time and effort.
Hand it out.
You know, well, I would think
A link,
online.
Yeah.
PDF, whatever.
Obviously, it's like, it still doesn't prevent a parent from asking for it.
Yeah.
Then you complain.
Okay.
But then if there's a question or somebody comes home and says, oh, they're teaching us this, then you can just go right there and see for yourself. There's no.
That's not part of the talk, Tony. They might get the syllabus. I don't know. I'd have to look. 'Cause the syllabus outlines exactly. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, that's all. But if you find any just hindrance or whatever you want to use, just let us know this. Or people can preemptively look at it and say, I don't want my kid to learn that before it just, I don't know, the more information people have access to, the better. All right, next up. Sorry, get into the wrong deck. Revised policy second reading. So no changes to any of these. So policy EDCA, crisis prevention and emergency response plan. Could you get a motion, please?
I'll make a motion that we accept policy EBCA, crisis prevention and emergency response plans.
A second by Tony. All those in favor? Whoops, sorry. Steve?
Yes.
Vote. Tony? Yes, Tony, yes. Cindy?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Next is EDCH, Chemical Safety and Chemical Hygiene Plan. Motion, please.
Can we do these all at once or they have to be done one at a time?
We've always done them individually, just so that it gives everybody a chance to vote yea or nay. But if you want to try it to do all three at once, I don't think anyone.
I'm gonna give it a roll.
Joe, anyone have any objection? Thinking of any reason I could do it, Joe?
No, I can't think of any reason.
I'll make a motion that we accept policies EBCH, chemical safety, chemical hygiene plan, EH public access to school district records, and IGE parental objections to specific course material.
Second by Tony. Steve? Yes. Tony? Tony, yes. Cindy?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Motion passes unanimously. Next up, strategic plan update, Mr. Mullin.
Yes, so schools are developing their calendars for the 25-26 school year. As is, the draft. I'm in charge of creating the calendar for all the other districts. I can no longer fly under the radar. So typically a superintendent takes all the calendars, we present it, then we go back to SST and identify any outlying dates that somebody might have.
I love this.
You're going to be in my office tomorrow. Calendars, baby.
We're gonna run it.
He's gonna, I would like to come see you and help you out with this.
Guess who's we're getting off to?
Well, yeah, I got elected to do it. I was like, Tillman. But I actually said that when they told me, I was like, oh, my board chair is gonna love this. On professional days, we are currently maxed out on capacity for PD days. We could go into a day and something comes up, we could come to you, but currently the calendar's maxed out. And I'm gonna say this again, we couldn't really do a PD day because it would affect SST and then we'd be out of alignment with the 10 days and keeping everything in order. Does that make sense?
How do we, what's the solution to that?
There is none. It's an RSA. Well, go ahead. I'm sorry, John.
No, I just have an idea whether it works or not, and can we do it? I don't know. What about a delayed opening? Or,
Yep, we can do those.
so in theory, we could have a 2-hour delayed open on March 25th, 2025, or 26th, and have 2 hours. Is that productive? Would that be, depending on what you're doing?
Correct.
The early dismissal of that.
Yes, I'm just gonna say this. I caution that because it does, I've done it before. They're typically not as productive. I will also say too, really impacts our customers.
Yeah, I understand. And I wouldn't suggest to do that, but I'm with you on that.
But I would not start putting them in because it just, I don't find the bang for the buck to get fit.
Well, I don't want to do it if it's not, I mean, if we're not getting 2 hours worth of, at the expense of 2 hours of.
Yep.
Like the capital.
Yep.
Worth a try.
Determine ongoing grades based for individual academic level. Tom has checked with me. I think it's more 6, 7, and 8, where grades 4 and 5, they're still in those elementary classes. The teachers can differentiate a lot right there. Work with consultants.
But 6, 7, and 8 are doing it.
They're more, yep, there's a high one level in between.
And we test in what, January?
Ready? Middle, yep.
Good. Thank you.
Work with consultants at the district level. Improve differentiated learning. This work continues. We have brought in a reading consultant at LRES. She's focusing on data and instruction. She's meeting with Tom. I think she's already met with Tom. She's looking to add some more dates to meet with people. We are looking at if we have some Title I funds. We've maxed out our Title II pretty much, but we rolled over our Title I funds and we're looking to pay her those Title I funds. I worked with her at Nottingham. Nottingham was a school that, when we were doing, was it the first test, an EASP test?
Yeah.
It was a school in need, one of the lower performing schools. They brought her in. And when I left there, it was one of the top performing schools. The amount of work that she did with reading and instruction. She's been to Candia. She's been in a couple other places where they've really seen reading scores go up. So I've had a lot of good work with Mary Ann.
Be going. Missing from this is the high school. What do we do?
Pete's got some stuff coming in. We got some differentiated work and stuff. He's hired a consultant to come in either January or the March day to work with the staff.
You could just update that to reflect that.
Oh, yep, I can't.
Not now, but yep.
Access to the district is on differentiated. I did that, didn't I? Access with it, that's wrong.
Assess
That,
where the district is in the
Yeah.
differentiated learning.
yeah. I put that in the wrong spot. I'm sorry, John.
I didn't.
I did, yeah. That team, why did I, yeah, I don't know. But they are working on differentiated learning. Mary Ann's also coming in. We have Pete working with them too. Working consultants to improve. I guess, why the two, it's actually, all right, moving on, Terry.
Well, I guess my question is it's assessing it. And isn't that like grading it in essence?
I guess it's just making, how do you assess it? You assess it by making sure that when we're doing walkthroughs, differentiation is happening. So when the teachers walk through it and they have the rubric from, that, what, you know, are differentiating happening. So that's how the administrators are assessing it. It'd be hard to relay that in something like this, knowing that 5 walkthroughs are happening. That is something that we're looking for on its instructions.
We know it's getting, for lack of a better way, graded.
Yeah.
And we should be able to see the grades.
Yeah, I'd have to go back through and pull.
Yeah.
Well, and single.
Next time.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
this is what it's about. In the sense that, are we successful or are we not so successful? Because that's the only way you're gonna know is by assessing yourself, right?
Investigate the feasibility of hiring a board certified. That's done. We've hired the 3. Access district-wide behavior supports needs through classroom observations. I think that's where we want to go. The BAT team monitors behavioral health work across the district monthly. School SEL programs meet monthly to identify how to meet the needs of students. Student intervention teams meet weekly to review individual student progress. That's continuing. All I got.
The last 2 action items don't have anybody responsible for them, any due dates, and that was, we just added a.
Yep. We're going to start the, yep.
I do have a weird question. So I'm noticing the due dates on some of these are from June of 23. Are we updating the due dates to reflect current action?
Well, I think they're ongoing. Even though they were due June 23rd, we're not stopped doing it. We're going to continue to do it. I think it was making sure that we started the process. And then we're going to continue to, you know, that's one thing I always say. I get cautious of when we start adding more and more. We want to continue to do what we do and do it well.
Right.
So if you start to add more and more, certain things go away because there's only so many hours in the day.
Yeah,
You know,
I'm just thinking that, so I know what,
Example.
yeah, well, because, so I know what they're doing. If someone were to look at this, they go, well, they say they're doing this, but it was supposed to be done in June of last year.
Yep.
Why isn't it done yet? Kind of. I think the labeling is a bit of a misnomer for a due date. If we don't have a targeted end date, it's sort of it gives a false impression that we're somehow behind.
Yeah.
A schedule when we're not.
I could go back to and pull all the old ones and show you, no, when we've updated these.
Yeah. Down the basement.
I have them, or Jen has them, where we update these all the time. And we can go back last year and I can show you what we did then too. So this is what we're at right now.
Yeah.
But we can go back and it's a running list that I think we kind of wipe out and we start all over again just to keep you guys involved.
Yeah, my only suggestion maybe is change the title from due date to something more applicable to the date. Because it's not,
Guys,
because it's not a true due date. If we don't have a deadline, it's not due. It's something we're doing. And I think it's good what we're doing, but I just don't want this to read.
Well, again, like a target date, like even anything, the intent was there was a due date, right? Because everything was set out that, and it was June of 23 that we were gonna get it done. And now that it's been either completed or it's ongoing, to me, what we should do is, for example, investigate the feasibility of hiring a board certified. I would keep that there, but I would like either flash through it or docs or something, some sort of, and then you don't have to see, we see it each time it's there, but nobody has to talk about it because we know it's done. More of the concrete. You know, this one, this is one of the few that we could say definitively.
Even a status that says ongoing or complete, a column next to due date, actually
It does say that, doesn't it?
status ongoing. Well, there's a progress and some of them that are completed do say completed or ongoing. But
Yeah, so to me,
I
it's,
suppose it's kind of there.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
I'll figure something out.
I just happen to look at it and go, God, it reads weird. And I don't want,
No, I
a
kind of
lot
get,
of people who look at docs,
I get it.
vacuum, and I just want to make sure that,
As informative as they can be. I got you.
see what I'm saying?
Got you. I'm on it.
Yeah.
No, I think that's it. Yep. Thank you, Tom. Next up, committee reports, any committee reports?
About everything from CIP and budget. So, no,
Well,
no new
there's
updates.
an update on the budget. That was last night.
So budget committee met last night. There was some non-budget related conversation and then some really good budget related conversation. I think overall, the budget committee seemed okay with what we were doing. I didn't, Doug asked his usual, what will we do with less money question? How could we survive and what would we do with extra money? Which I didn't expect, but the conversation about the solar, of course. I think overall, that if I'm honest, I think it went well. I think the budget stuff went really well.
I'd love to hear about your plan to look into purchasing school buses and.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm like, good.
Said it and I thought of you, Tone. I was
I'm like,
I mean, a huge thing, but with that, I mean, Doug got it too. There's added costs, added expenses, and we, added responsibility, but,
it's
$1 million, when I looked at it a couple months ago, I was like,
Which the river runs 30 buses and I think
When I was-
just over 2 million or something. They don't spend a lot more than.
closer to the contract, we're gonna have to, again, figure out what we want to do, whether we're gonna stay in this role or start to jump in.
Yes, I can't drive a bus too. I love to, but
In the morning, Todd, you could.
yeah, good.
So I'll get an afternoon driver and you could be my morning driver.
Stop at Long Branch.
Just want anything? Bus driver Tony do between.
Constantly late.
The other committee reports?
CIP's chosen not to meet until next March.
Good. Superintendent's report.
We've only been back in school a few days. I really don't have much then, because we went from one board meeting to basically a week off to our next board meeting.
All right. Correspondence or other? Hearing nothing, seeing nothing. Manifest?
Manifest tonight, that you signed up on, payables, $607,174.38. Payroll, $525,238.09, for a grand total of $1,132,412.47. Pending assigned. Thank you.
All right. Minutes, October 16, 2024. I have one thing that we need to amend. It's just adding a word, and that is on page 5. Under committee reports. What day? What's that?
November 20th.
What's the October 16th? On page 5, near the two-thirds of the way down, committee reports, Mr. Harmon shared that it should be the strategic planning committee next. These references planning committee. That's the only thing I had, so if nobody has anything else, if somebody could make a motion to pass the minutes
I'm
as
sorry.
amended. Go ahead, Jen.
I'm sorry, John, I didn't hear what that amendment was.
Yeah, we're just under committee reports. Do you see that
Mhm.
there? It says.
Yeah, I
Mr.
just
Harmon
did-
shared that strategic planning.
Strategic.
So we're
planning,
adding the
thank you.
word strategic in front of planning committee.
Any other changes to the other minutes?
I do have on,
Okay.
November 20th. So I'll entertain a motion for the minutes of October 16th, 2024.
Make a motion that we accept the minutes for October 16th, 2024,
As amended.
as amended.
As amended. Second by Tony. Cindy. Okay.
Steve, yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
myself, yes, thank you. Next up, minutes of November 13th, 2024. Get a motion for that?
The motion that we accept the minutes of November 13th, 2024.
Get a second?
Second.
Second by Cindy. Steve, Tony,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
myself, yes. On the next one, minutes of November 2024, I have a question, and this is for page 6. And don't tell me it's disappeared. Second reading, yes, if we look at it's confusing to me, and I'm not sure what is going on. Because if you look, voted unanimously in the affirmative, and then it says Joe, Steve, AIF, GBCD, Joe. So I don't know if is it your some shorthand, Jen, or? You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
that's some shorthand I left in there. Thank you. I will delete that.
All right. So is it just voted unanimously in the affirmative, and the last part is just removed? I guess that's a yes. All right. Everybody clear on that?
Yeah.
So the new revised policy on November 20th, 2024 on page 6. If you look at the new revised, the second reading motion, the last sentence where it's that show in small letters is lowercase, it is being removed. It's and just about to move it. So we get a motion to accept the minutes as amended for November 20th.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as amended for the 20th.
The second
Second.
by Cindy. Steve,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
and myself, yes.
Go back to the 13th for 1 minute.
Go ahead.
Was I there for that meeting? Was that the one was I
Oh,
there at
that's the
all?
one you weren't there.
Oh,
If I was there.
no, that's when we were downstairs. I think you were not.
Yeah.
So it should be an
I'm listed as, yeah, and
Names
I'm
on
listed
there.
as in there, which I was not. So I have to be stricken from there and then. My,
Yes, and abstain, yes.
So, we need to amend to remove Tony.
so withdraw that motion.
Yeah, so I think that was mine, right?
So we motion to not,
I think if, Joe, remind me, do we just normally, because we've voted on something that, Tony shouldn't have voted on, and we should have amended it, so do we just make another motion to override the last one?
I mean, that's what I would do. I mean,
Yeah.
but it was only to amend the motion. So, I mean,
Well, he voted too, so that's the problem, so I think if we. Okay, so what I'll do is we'll just, if we get a motion for the
motion to reconsider and then complicate it.
if we could do it again and just,
Yeah,
as
can I
amended.
I'll make a motion that we amend the minutes from November 13th to remove Tony.
And that's, yep, and that's it. Get a second on that? Second by Cindy. I think we're all set now. Jenny, you all set on that?
Get to vote, so yeah.
I'm just making sure Jen's. all-
Okay.
I am. Thank,
All
I
right,
am. Thank you. Mhm.
Steve,
Yes.
Tony? Cindy?
Yes.
And Joe?
yes.
And I'm a yes. Get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Steve, get a second. Second by Tony. Steve,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Cindy? Joe?
Yes.
All right. Motion passed, and myself, yes. So motion passes unanimously.
I think I'm like, I don't think I even went to that meeting at all.
Sometimes I'll